Good evening. Welcome to the March 9th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee Levin?
Present.
Trustee Bazemore? Trustee Gazada?
Present.
Mayor Garrity?
Present.
Are there any mayors and trustees announcements this evening?
Yes, I guess we will get into that first, then
Sure.
we will save ourselves some time in the work session. So I just want to say, if you're finally getting to see this because you're a Cablevision customer, we're not able to go out live tonight, although we do expect that's going to happen soon. And everybody may be checking us out at home. And if you're a regular viewer of our programs, you may have noticed some of the audio getting better and worse over the last several weeks. And there's been a lot of effort by a number of people to put in some new equipment and to partner and connect with all of the companies and peoples at each stage of the recording and the transmission. And so we are really optimistic that very soon everyone's going to get to watch work sessions, legislative sessions, live on television, on their computer, and so just stay tuned and thank you for your patience. And I will let anybody who is watching this in time know that tomorrow evening, which is Thursday, March 10th, at the Ossining Library at 6:30, it is free as always. It's the Ossining Documentary Discussion Series program for this month. It is True Cost, and that will tell us it's true cost of fashion, our clothing. Everything that we're wearing has a cost to it. There was how was the labor treated in every step of the way? Was there an exploitation of labor? Was there an exploitation of the environment on the way? Or are you wearing very conscientiously created clothing? We'll find out exactly what that means. The film starts at 6:30, followed by a panel discussion, and as always, it should be a very interesting conversation with all of the folks who join us from the community. So I hope to see you there at 6:30 at the library tomorrow night. Do my colleagues have anything else? All right, then we have a very full and exciting agenda. We will get going. Madam Clerk.
Okay, there are two board resolutions this evening. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? No. Letter A, authorization for village to accept payment in satisfaction of foreclosed tax liens, 85 Croton Avenue and 2 Clinton Avenue. Whereas in accordance with Ossining Village Charter, Article 4, the village treasurer is charged with the duty of collecting real property taxes from persons named in the tax roll, and in accordance with New York State Real Property Tax Law, Section 1110. The village treasurer has the authority on or before the expiration of the applicable redemption period to accept payment of real property taxes from such persons along with all charges authorized by law for real property subject to delinquent tax liens. And whereas the applicable redemption period expired as of June 1st, 2015 for the 2012 real property taxes which had become delinquent tax liens in May 2013, and with such expiration of the redemption period, the treasurer has no authority without action by the Board of Trustees to accept further payments, and whereas notwithstanding the expiration of such redemption period, the property owner for properties located at 85 Clinton Avenue, 89.16-1-51, and 2 Clinton Avenue, 89.19-2-16, provided sufficient proof of an ability to pay in full all taxes and assessments against the subject property to bring the account up to date, and the ability to make a full and complete settlement in satisfaction of the foreclosed delinquent tax lien. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby authorizes and directs the treasurer to accept payment in an amount sufficient to pay in full the total amount, including any interest, penalties, and other charges authorized by law of the real property taxes for properties located at 89 Croton Avenue and 2 Clinton Avenue in the Village of Ossining, and authorizes any and all necessary filings or notifications to evidence a release of said lien against the real property. Do I have a motion?
I have a point of order. It appears that in the the second paragraph, it references 85 Croton Avenue, and in the last paragraph, 89 Croton Avenue. So is 85 the correct address? Okay, so I would accept it as changed. So moved.
Second?
On the board. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter B, resolution authorizing completion of execution of documents and individual appointments to implement the CDBG grant program. Whereas New York State recently awarded the Village of Austin as a pass-through agency with Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funds totaling $295,845 for Project 1522WC-HR216-15 in connection with rehabilitation by IFCA Housing Network of affordable housing owned by IFCA within the Village of Ossining. And whereas the CDBG program requires completion and execution by the village of certain forms, reports, and agreements in connection with the grant and the appointment of individuals to certain positions relevant to the project. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to monitor CDBG project number 1522WC-HR216-15, including the completion of any and all forms and reports, and authorizes the mayor as the chief elected official to execute on behalf of the Village of Ossining a grant agreement with New York State and subrecipient agreement with IFCA Housing Network. And be it further resolved that the following two individuals are hereby appointed positions relevant to the project. Karen DeTore as Fair Housing Officer and Coordinator, and Peter Garcia as Labor Standards Compliance Officer. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain, given the fact that I work for EFCA, so.
Okay. And can I have a motion to adjourn into regular work session?
So moved.
On the board. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye. With that, thank you very much
You're welcome.
for joining us. And, Sombrano.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and trustees.
We'll try to have you speak as little as possible with your voice tonight.
Yes, my voice is, I'm not sure what happened, but I think it's allergies because I'm fine. It's just, my voice sounds not myself. So first, I would like to start, if I may, today is actually Corporation Council's Lori Lee Dixon's birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Lori. Thank you for
Are you
spending it with us.
should we all sing into the microphone? I'm thinking.
That wouldn't necessarily be the nicest gift.
No singing. Thank you again. So tonight we have a very full agenda, and the first item on tonight's agenda is going to be, we have a proposal for the board's consideration for the dam repairs that we've already talked to the board on a couple of occasions. And the subject is going to be presented to you, Andrew Teese, who's the superintendent of water, Paul Faioli, village engineer, and also a representative from Arcadis Engineering, Carolyn Lowe. So with that, I think I'm going to pass the baton to them.
You just want to do the top perimeter light, probably? Oh, yeah.
That's good. You need a seat?
Those are so much nicer. No,
What am I doing?
I know. I wish I had been as demanding. Why just throw away all the crap? It's doorways.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm
here to talk about our dam rehabilitation project. I have with us Carolyn Lowe, who's the Vice President of Arcadis Engineering, and Paul Fraioli. Basically, to give a quick synopsis of where we are today before we get into this presentation. This project was scoped out back in 2012. It was required by the DEC to make our dam safe, to increase the spillway overflow, and in that process, we knew that we needed to make our water quality better at our filtration plant. So we made sure that we put in new intakes to bring the raw water quality better in this process into the plant, which is a pipe that goes through the dam. Back in 2012, when we decided to scope this project out, there was a grant put out by Homeland Security in 2013 that the village applied for, and it was the project was scoped to be $4 million, and the village applied for $3 million worth of funding. It took us until December of 2015 before we got an answer of no, that it wasn't acceptable. It was a good project. It was shovel ready, but the money wasn't there for us out of the 1.5 billion. So it was disappointing, but we had to do our due diligence to make sure that we did apply for it, and if we were eligible, don't want to do it later. So Carolyn's going to give us an overview. She's going to go through PowerPoint, and I'm going to add some points into the presentation here as we go. Just one quick thing before we get into the presentation. We did meet with two engineering firms, Arcadis and then another company, Schnabel Engineering. We asked them to look at the same two scopes. Arcadis came in more favorable in price, but not only that, Arcadis was the original design engineer, and we feel really strong that we would go towards a construction management service of a design engineer company that designed the actual project, so that if there were issues, you don't point fingers back and forth at each other. It's the same company. You look within to get the answer instead of two companies trying to resolve the issue. Thanks. Oh, one last thing. I keep saying one last thing. Yesterday we had a pre-bid mandatory walkthrough. What that means is in order to bid this project in the next couple of weeks, you had to physically be on site, have plans, and go through a full walkthrough. Arcadis representatives were there. Paul and myself were there. We went through the whole scope of the project, staging areas, what's required, the whole project. And then there were quite a few attendees. There was probably close to 20 people on site and maybe 10 to 12 different companies. A lot of subcontractors, but a lot of interest in this project, which is good for us. The original project we borrowed was $4 million back in 2012. We hope that with this type of interest, it's still going to be where we need to be, but there's no guarantee either way. So we know the price is going to range big time, but hopefully we have a really good company in our price range.
Thanks, Andy. So I thought I would start out just giving folks a bit of a history on the dam project. There might be some who are very familiar and others not so much. So I'll move quickly because I realize you have a very packed agenda. And Paul's going to help me out here. So this is the itinerary. We'll just go through a history of the dam, talk about the regulatory requirements and how we got to the point of having to do improvements, and then describe those improvements for you, give you some visuals with photos of the dam, because I think it's really neat to actually see it and get more acquainted to it. And then we'll move into the construction services that are necessary to adequately staff it during construction. So you have a very old dam. Paul, you can advance here. It's really quite neat.
Can't just press enter?
I think it'd be the arrows too on the keyboard.
There you go. So the dam is actually about 125 years old, which makes it one of the older dams in the state. And it's considered an earthen dam, but it has a concrete core wall, and it might very well have masonry as well. We can't see it. There were some minor improvements after the turn of the century, but nothing significant. It has a height of 34 feet at its greatest when the water level is lowest. And it holds, in dam language, it's acre feet, but to those of us who know gallons, it's 120 million gallons. And it is considered a high hazard class C dam, and that has nothing to do with the actual condition of the dam. It has to do with the fact that where the dam is located and the fact that there are residents close by, there are roadways, the treatment plant is at the foot of the dam, the aqueduct is near the dam. So it really has more to do with the siting of the facility and what might happen if there was an overtopping. So just understand, when we do the improvements, that won't change because that's part and parcel to where your dam is sited. So here's just a nice aerial to acquaint everyone to the site and to provide a little language, because I will be referencing some of these items. The crest of the dam is at the highest point, and it's that long angular piece at the right there. The embankment is a sloped grassy area. It goes down to what we call the toe at the foot of the pre-oxidation basin. The gatehouse is where the current supply piping comes in and feeds the treatment plant. The spillway in the top right corner is where the dam overtops when it's high enough, and it goes down the chute into what's called a stilling basin, where it gets to kind of slow down the water a little, and then out into the brook. Just another angle to show you exactly what that embankment looks like. And really why we're here today is due to a change in the regulatory requirements. Of course, when the dam was built, it was built to the standards of that time. But they have changed, and now, as I think Andy mentioned, the spillway capacity is not adequate. There are some deficiencies in the dam, and the DEC, upon an inspection, cited it unsound, which is not the same as unsafe. That's a different category, but unsound, and required the village to go through a number of steps to hire an engineer and do the reports that are listed there, of which Arcadis did at the time we were Malcolm Perney. We prepared a design that was approved by the DEC, and as Andy mentioned, we're prepared to go to bid. And we did hesitate just to wait and make sure that FEMA funding was not available. And now we're at the point where the DEC is requiring that construction commence by June 1st, and we're on target to do that. So some of the things that came out of the many reports that were done were the modifications to the spillway, as mentioned, and I'm going to show you some photos of that, to the chute itself and to the stilling basin at the base of it, to the tow drain, which was the piece down near the plant. There is a requirement now to improve and make some additional inlets to the treatment plant, including a low-level outlet, and I'll explain that as well. There is a bunch of vegetation and stump removal required in different areas of the dam. The crest, which was that top piece, needs to be leveled, and then some wave protection. So here's the current spillway. It's fairly rudimentary, as you can see, given when it was constructed. Go ahead, Paul. To the left, you see after the water overtops the spillway, it goes down the chute, and the bottom right-hand corner is the condition of the chute. It is missing a lot of the masonry, and that needs to be repaired. Gets to the bottom, and this is the stilling basin, where basically the flow is allowed to kind of slow down and then enter the brook. It too needs a number of repairs. This is just a kind of a quick picture of the design document that shows some of the repairs. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a new spillway weir where the flow will overtop it. It's much larger, and that will increase the capacity, which is exactly what you need to do to become compliant now. The spillway will be redone, completely recast in concrete. The stilling basin at the bottom will be enlarged, and also the surfaces will all be smoothed out, the vegetation removed. And then there's actually a new path that will allow staff to access the crest of the dam, and that's what you see, the little like roadway looking thing that goes over the spillway chute. Right now it's really only accessible by foot. It'll now be accessible by like a four-wheeler, which is really a big advantage to the staff to be able to inspect and maintain the dam. This is the toe of the dam, and you see all the vegetation that's there. That needs to be removed. And because moisture does collect down there, we are going to do some improvements there as well. There's what's called a tow drain, which is the where you see the serpentine tank there, where that meets the slope. We're installing some filter wrap and some stone and some piping to allow that moisture to move away so that vegetation doesn't grow there anymore. What you see on the left is some new piping that will come from the dam into the treatment plant. It won't go straight in through the core wall the way the existing piping does. It's got to go angular, as you see there, that right angle, because while the core wall is sound, we're hesitant to penetrate it because it's so old. So the way we'll do that is to kind of go around the side of it. We'll install a large pipe, a 5-foot diameter pipe that'll have 3 new pipes in it. and then it will make its way around into its own gatehouse and then into the treatment plant. This is just some drawings showing the piping. One of the improvements that we have is called the low-level intake. Right now, you're not able to draw the dam down as low as the DEC would like you to in the event of like a natural disaster coming. So we will install a new pipe to allow you to do that and to satisfy that criteria. You'll also be able to draw at different levels, which is really an advantage at different seasons when it's helpful to be drawing at different levels in the dam. This is the crest again. You can see that core wall that I mentioned is actually exposed. So we need to apply some soil to the top of that and level it out and take out any vegetation. Just some drawings again showing some of that going on. And then here is where we need to put some wave protection. You can see when the dam levels are high, it does erode the crest. So we'll put more stone there and more riprap to kind of stabilize that as well. Just some pictures showing some of that from our actual design documents. So as Andy mentioned, we had a really good turnout at the mandatory pre-bid meeting yesterday. Contractors came and walked the site, picked up documents if they didn't have them, and got familiar with the improvements. We're really hoping for, you know, some good responses there. DEC also requires the village to have a full-time resident during that construction, and that is part of the proposal that Arcadis has provided. We kind of have two parts of our services. One is more an in-office service where we'll review all the shop drawings, we'll coordinate any submittals that come in, requests for information, we'll review schedules. We'll also provide some operations support. We have licensed operators on staff, and when we draw down the level of the dam, we need to increase the supply from New York City DEP. That sometimes causes an upset in the treatment plant, so we're going to assist with that as well. We have to also continue to provide some inspections of the dam during the construction. So these are some of the what we call construction administration services that we have. And then, as mentioned, you need a full-time resident engineer and inspector during construction, which we'll provide. And then we'll also provide a technical expert for when that, what we call the casing pipe, that large 5-foot pipe I mentioned, is installed, because that is kind of a tricky construction. It's like a tunneling operation, and it'll need some special oversight. So right now our construction schedule is about 15 months. We have to work around some of the seasonal times that the dam can't be down, obviously due to high demands, but we do think that the project can be constructed in that time frame. I know that wasn't very visible, sorry. But as we said, we're out to bid now. The site visit was yesterday. We're expecting the bids back on the 23rd, assuming that we don't extend that. We'll have what we call substantial completion in July, which is basically everything's installed. There's just really last-minute items that need to be done and punch list items, and then final completion by August of 2017, at which point the dam will no longer be considered unsound, which is the condition rating it's got right now, and it'll just require periodic maintenance for the new installation. Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn. So I'm just going to make a couple of comments, and we'll turn it over to Andy to talk a little bit more particulars about the contract that we wish to have executed for this. The crux for the project and what gave us the order from DEC was really the spillway, but the largest component and the biggest benefit for Andy and I and the operators is the coring through and the new intake structure. She briefly touched on it. That's the significant cost in the job, because there's a new there's coring through an earthen dam, and then there's also the inlet structure that we have to put, which is about 30 feet down in the driveway, and then tie back into the existing plant. Understand that this is going to have such a long-term benefit on the raw water quality that we're allowed to bring in from our own source, our free source, our Indian Brook Reservoir, very precious resource for us, and this is going to allow us to do what we can't do now. Right now, we're forced to take off the sediment from the bottom of the reservoir because all those valve stems are snapped and in the open position, and we constantly bring that sediment in. So there's going to be such a collateral benefit where our solids loadings are going to go down. The disposal costs to get rid of our alum sludge is going to go down in the future, and this is all going to be things that are part and parcel with this job. This is really, you know, if you want to go back and pull up meetings from 10 years ago, this is one of the first things we ever wanted to do. And now the biggest thing we talk to you about now is our new plant. but this was one of the first things that we wanted to get in place to go along with everything else that we rebuilt, and so now we're getting it. So we appreciate that, and it's going to make the plant run even more efficient. That said, there was one benefit. We're going to maybe have some construction escalation because we had to wait so long for FEMA, but that's time will tell. We had some real good bidders show up yesterday, and we anticipate some competitive bidding. However, since the design documents were created 3-4 years ago and today, we actually brought to you the request to study the necessity of a new plant, which looks like the direction we're going. So one of the things that we got to add into this construction document was a redesign of the structure, the intake structure, and how it feeds our plant. We're going to put the ability to feed the new plant if and when we ever build it. So in a way, that was a good delay with regard to that, because if not, we would have had to dig that all up again and redesign that for the capacity that our new plant can do. So there was some forward thinking in the design there too. So that was a benefit of the delay. So with that all in mind, Andy's going to discuss some of the costs associated with this CM proposal now.
Just getting back to operations, it's going to be pretty tricky because we're going to be feeding the residents steady state water. We're going to be switching over to our Croton source. Prior to switching over to our Croton source, we have to manage and bring down our reservoir level. We don't want to just send contractors in and pump the water out of the reservoir to lower it so they can do construction. Let's use as much of our own water as possible, especially during that season, because it prevents us from going into the per capita cost, which is 4 times the cost of regular water from New York City. So the way Arcadis broke the proposal up is into design construction services, and that is $185,840. Task 2, so that was task 1, is construction certification report, $14,160. And then we have subtasks and then resident inspections with a $40,000 contingency allowance. The total price is $597. The other engineer that we met with numerous times.
Are we on the wrong slide, or are you just adding to?
No, there is no slide.
I'm just
Oh, okay.
talking about now. Sorry.
The other engineering firm that we met with was $613,000, and it would have been an outside firm looking at the design of the designers. And we had spoken to Trustee Codman about that, and he gave us some good advice. You kind of want to have one-stop shopping to make accountability happen. That's all I have. If you want to add anything.
No, I'm just willing to answer any questions if anyone has.
Do you want to come back to the table, ask questions?
So, Paul, can you explain what you just said again? That the DEC was requiring us to do the spillway, and then the added benefit is like something else that we want to do for the long term. Is that?
Yeah.
So what was that other thing? Like,
To reiterate, and I'll let Carolyn maybe get more technical if needed. The spillway design, which she showed in one of her first slides, and I could just switch to it super fast. That design was constructed when the reservoir was built in 1888, I believe, and that spillway, which is designed to take an overflow of the reservoir so the earthen dam is not compromised in a flooding event, in today's design standards is undersized. So when the DEC started making its rounds, I mean, it made low HUD a couple times, and they talked about all the high hazard dams. We were a high hazard dam that was unsound and classified as such, and the DEC paid us a visit and said, you need to do something about that. And they made an order out of it. So that is really the catalyst of the project, but we have these other things that we're incorporating into the project to touch it once and touch it right.
okay, and those other things are
The other thing I mentioned was the T off of the intake structure that's going to go into the existing plant.
okay.
We put a T there in the design to facilitate, to isolate and facilitate the new plant when that's built sometime in the future, with the appropriate intake sizing to get the maximum drawdown from the reservoir and use that water as much as we can instead of the old Croton aqueduct source from the Croton Reservoir.
was just thinking that there was another inspection in May that went through, again, the conditions of the dam permit, and that was all the items that I mentioned, the leveling of the crest, the tow drain, the modifications to the chute, the stilling basin, all of those were required by the DEC. It was kind of like the spillway capacity one, which was the main one, but all of the other items and the drawings that I showed you with the improvements are a requirement as well.
Can you go back to like a drawing of the dam? I just wanted to. The overview of where the chamber is going to go down. I think it's a top view. Yeah, you can go to that one. Okay. I'll just go up here. So essentially, they'll have to install a shaft into like.
Needs a mic.
Excuse me?
You need a mic. Just,
Oh.
can you grab that mic?
Okay. Can everybody hear me? So essentially where that X is, with the circle, that'll be a shaft that'll be drilled and put into the ground where there'll be existing pipes. They'll be installing 3 different pipes in there along with valving. And what'll happen is there's a core wall in this dam which they'll have to core through the side of the dam, which is, we'll have to drop the level of the dam. We'll have to core it through. They'll have to make sure that it's all grouted and it's sealable, and they'll have to test to make sure that there's no water that could ever migrate around the pipe. And then it'll have to be tied into the T that Paul had talked about by the chlorine room at the filtration plant. Once it's live and up and running, we'll have to take the old pipe that's in that gatehouse from 1863 or 83, and we'll have to inject grout in there and make sure that there's no possible way that water could eventually keep migrating through that old intake. So it's pretty intense. There's a lot of safety factors involved. It's not like we're going to be doing this boring of something that you would see by NASA. Live through a live water channel. We need to bring the water level down, but it's key that we bring the water level down and we still maintain steady state operations through the plant. The good thing, there was something required by the DEC where we couldn't do the work in the summertime. That kind of helped us because we have a safe yield of 1.2 million gallons per day. We need that water during that time period, and in the fall, our consumptions will go down, and we could just stay steady state operations off of New York City water source. Paul and I originally had looked at this project saying, okay, this is $4 million. What's the return on investment on something like this? We know that it's a minimum savings of $400,000 to $500,000 a year just by providing our own water source. That's at straight water cost. That, if you go 4 times that rate, it's huge money. Because once you go above the New York City per capita number, you pay 4 times the rate. So this water source saves us major money of purchased water based on our population. That's it.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, John, go ahead.
I'm pleased that we're using the same firm that did the work before, and they obviously have history and knowledge of the plant. So I'm pleased about that, and I'm pleased that the construction management and the design team are in the same grouping. I think that's just good business, and thanks for taking my advice, I guess. But we also got the best bid too, I think, as well. So that's good news. I think the only concern I have is the coring. I think as you indicate, that has the potential for risk, and I guess you don't know until you start digging, right? I mean, that's kind of how that works. So we have to just I don't know if the engineer would like to speak to that at all.
Sure. So you're right. That's definitely the riskiest part of the project. There will be a sub-consultant, hopefully a specialty sub-consultant who will be doing that piece of the work, and we'll be very rigorous in our review of everything they provide before they ever step foot on the site. So they'll have to provide us with a lot of detail on how they're doing it, what they've done in the past for other people. We'll get references. There'll be a very diligent review of that particular contractor before they do their work.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there technology or things like that using
Yep.
new science that would hopefully help us get a better idea of
There is.
what
There
we're getting
definitely
into
is.
here? So,
People use lasers now. They use GIS. It's honestly, it's very hard not to hit your mark. And we've done borings. We know the soil conditions. So we have a good confidence that it can be done by a good contractor.
Okay.
Yep.
Paul?
Again, what she said last was we did borings. We took boring samples throughout the entire earthen dam, and we do have, as rudimentary as they were, the original contract documents. So to some extent, we're not boring into virgin ground.
Right.
We know what we're bringing, and the contractors know, and they're going to price it accordingly. So there's not a lot of unforeseens that we anticipate.
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. We're not expecting big boulders, anything like that could cause trouble because it's mostly fill, at least in the slope, and then we get out and we're in the low point, and then we'll turn the corner. So, again, we have confidence that if we get a good contractor and we're really on them, it'll go well.
I have no further questions.
Thank you for the presentation. It was
Thank you for
interesting.
having
I do have a couple questions. And Paul, thank you for clarifying some of that stuff when you said the coordination of the design for the project now and what will be maybe happening a couple years from now in regards to the new plan. That was one of the concerns that I had while you were doing the presentation. So that's good to see that that is being coordinated at that going forward. I guess the second question that I have is, we do have an amount of close to $600,000 on it. So my question will be for Tom, I guess, because we had what is in our budget, what was allowable, what happened in 2013. If maybe Paul or Andy or Tom can help me just to clarify the number portion of this.
In 2012, the engineer's estimate was $4 million.
That was for the whole project.
That's for the whole project.
I'm talking about this right
Yep.
now.
For right now, we were originally going to do the Arcadis project as one whole design and construction management project. So at the time, it was I believe it was $200,000 for study. I don't remember the actual design cost, but it was a little under $1 million for the whole entire design, construct CM work, and study that was done. I believe our engineer's estimate was $3.2 million. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it's going to be close for the $4 million number. Now, we're not going to know until we get these numbers back. I mean, honestly, we could have numbers from 3.5 up to 13 million. We don't know what we're going to.
I
But the
understand
good
that.
but the good thing is it wasn't 3 bidders. It was 12 bidders.
Yeah.
Let's see who actually puts in, but we're not going to know until we get it. And
I understand the cost process and how much the whole project is going to
Yep.
be. What I was asking is,
we had 25% originally budgeted for the whole project for CM design and everything.
sorry, how much?
25%. So it was it was about $1 million.
Okay. So Tom, how much do we have in allowances for this project? Do we have the money within the budget that we have passed, or do we keep that money aside from 2013, or do we have to include this as a capital project?
Good evening. As Andy had said earlier, we actually did borrow the money with the anticipation that the construction was going to be underway relatively shortly. I believe that was 2012 and 2013. So the money has been borrowed. Some of it has been spent, on the project so far. But we're not allowed to use bond monies borrowed for one purpose for another purpose. So the money is still there to be spent on this project. After the competitive bids are opened and awarded, and knowing what this construction management contract is, we're going to have to evaluate whether or not the $4 million was enough, and if there's additional monies that are needed. whether or not we're going to issue another bond or whether or not we have fund balance that's available. We have been building the fund balance with the anticipation that, we're going to have these capital improvements underway, so that's a discussion that we're going to have in the future.
Now, you talking about the fund balance for the water fund?
The water fund, yes.
The water fund. So this would be separate from the general fund or the
Right.
sewer?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, it's pretty unusual to borrow millions of dollars years before you do a project, but it was because we anticipated we were going to be going ahead with it. 2012, you said, was the original borrow? That was before I was even on the board.
Exactly. I mean, we were 1 week away from bidding this project when the state came out with, they called us, the DEC called us and said, listen, don't bid your project. You guys have a great project. It's ready to go. You got a really good shot at this. So we really thought that we really did have a good shot, but,
That was the multi-million-dollar FEMA
FEMA
funding
money,
that we
yeah.
were told we should reach out for.
$3 million out of $1.5 billion. We thought, we were ready. We were the only dam project that was ready in the state to do this work.
So,
And
do you know who got the money?
mostly New York City. After like the Sandy storms and that whole
course they did.
getting everything ready, most of it went there. And so we waited another year because we pushed. So this was like 2 years ago. We're like, where do we stand? Well, you're still in the mix. We haven't made our ultimate decision. How much is left? Well, the governor just freed up another $500 million. Okay, great. And just
And I know that
We had-
your office worked diligently to try and
our
reach out to our
office,
folks in Albany and.
other local offices called for our behalf, and we did our best. So
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Andy.
Any other questions?
I'm just curious. Thank you for the presentation. How many workers are involved in all this? Like, what's the scope of the job here? It's 17 months? Is that what it is?
15.
15 months? How many people are involved? Like, what's the scope of this work? Yeah. Well, yeah. Engineers, construction, what are we talking about here?
Step forward to the mic, please.
Well, the actual construction will be done by a contractor, so I'm not sure how many staff.
It doesn't matter, right? Okay.
Well, I just want to make
Right.
sure I was answering the
Right.
question. In terms of our staff, if that was the question? Yep. So we'll have somebody in the field full-time, as I mentioned. We'll have another person who will be there for 3 months. We'll have people at every meeting. We'll have technical experts going out at different times during the construction in the field, and then we'll have office staff who are managing the contractor, reviewing shop drawings, reviewing schedules, reviewing payments. Honestly, I didn't come prepared with a number of individuals,
Okay.
but I could definitely give you that number.
I could try to speak on behalf of what will eventually be the low bid contractor. This project is very staged because of the workings around that we have to do with the reservoir elevations, and just in some sidebar conversations, they're not going to be doing a lot of concurrent work. So I guess as far as the public is concerned, all activity is going to be taking place during regular working hours. The access is via an easement secured through our office in Waterview. The village, rather, not our office, the office of the Corporation Council, and then our main entrance on Fowler Avenue. So what they can expect is probably truck traffic during regular hours, and maybe at best 20 to 30 folks on the site at one time, because that would be probably indicative of a large concrete pour, which there's going to be a few of those between the driver and the laborers and the masons, etc.
And how many other projects like this are going on in New York State right now? This sort of dam, although I'd love for our dam to last, the work to last the way this one has lasted since the 1890s. Very impressive work.
One of the bidders actually discussed with me that he's on a job similar to this, just for the spillway though, not for the coring through the earthen dam. And it's in a little more remote location, and there's a lot of easy access to the spillway.
Okay.
And he said, it was a couple of $1 million, and it paled in comparison to the logistics of this job. So
Stop doing that.
the advantage of that easement, which was huge for us, is logistically getting the equipment through Kelly Court
Yeah.
instead of trying to hire a huge crane to try and lift excavators over our pre-ox tanks up through, because you can't drive across
Yeah.
that whole. It's a huge deal getting the easement in the overall cost. So thanks
Great.
to
Great.
everybody that worked on it.
The easement leads to a staging area on that side. So there won't be constant traffic through Kelly. I just wanted that to be
Yeah.
sure that that's clear. They'll be mobilizing in a staging area, and they'll be accessing the staging area through that easement across private property.
I just have a request. When you're doing the bidding, the best one should win. But if one of these contractors has women and minorities and license for that, that would make me very happy.
Well, yeah, that came up yesterday because a lot of these, we had some big firms show up yesterday, and a lot of them are familiar with New York City work, and I'm very familiar with New York City contract work.
Right.
They have a requirement in most of their jobs of 10% to document for WBE and MBE.
Right. Great.
But we don't. We just have language in our boilerplate section that makes it a recommendation to try and give their due diligence. And when they do that on the job, we will certainly promote it and make it information available to you all. And they know that. And believe it or not, that's not as hard as you think it is to do sometimes, because there is there's a pretty significant component of MBE and WB out there.
Right.
And if they put the best price, they're going to get used one way or another. And the
Great.
vendors too. Vendors who supply the equipment.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Thank you.
You all set? All right,
We are.
thank you very much.
So if the board's okay, we are going to bring the resolution for you to approve for the contract for the construction management at the next board meeting, so.
Yes, I think we're all supportive of moving forward.
And I will get Corporation Counsel a copy of the proposal. I haven't done that yet, and
Oh.
she'll get that tomorrow. So
I think we
I just want to make that it's, she has to review it, and
yeah,
Okay. We thought that was done.
Will all happen by next Wednesday.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
please.
Mayor. The next item on the agenda is we're going to get an update from the representatives from GDC on Harbor Square. We have Joe DiGiuleski and also Ed Weinstein is here to present to the board the proposal for the dock extension. And also Dana White, the village historian, has been invited to provide a portion of the presentation that's going to be given to the board onto the property at the park. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Joe. Some of this.
All right, good evening, Mayor and trustees. And
Good
for
evening,
those of you seeing me for the first time, Joe Jagaleski of Ginsburg Development, and we're discussing the Harbor Square project here tonight. I'm going to try to go as quick as I can, and we'll let the two visitors come in first, and they'll see what I have left at the end. Any which way, three items on the list tonight. One is the dock proposal, the dock RFP. Some time ago, many years ago, there was an application made, I believe it was the Department of State, Abe can confirm, for a design service grant to extend the Ossining Dock, which is also known as the ferry pier, down at the waterfront. Some conceptual designs were put forth in that. There was some responses to that proposal. Ed Weinstein Architects seemed to have been, the front runner for that proposal work, and potentially may have been selected many years ago. The work never really went forward. So what we want to do is initiate that project now in the design services stage. I brought Ed in tonight to just rebrush over the concept of the work and some timing elements that we want to try to adhere to and kind of the next steps. There is a match as part of this grant. I think the original grant was around $21,000 or $22,000.
21.5.
21.5. It did require a match of equal amount. The proposal is slightly more than the combined value. I think it's around 44 or 45,000. So we, as picking up that part of the match, are also agreeing to pick up that
The difference?
additional shortfall. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ed here.
Mayor, trustees,
Good evening.
my name is Ed Weinstein. Some of you may know me. We were the designers of the shoreline down at the waterfront, which we're very happy to say survived Sandy very well. So this proposal has been out there for a while to extend the pier for two reasons: to be able to accommodate, say, visiting vessels such as Clearwater or other small historic ships that might be running up and down the Hudson. Also, the concept plan had provision for floating docks to accommodate transient boaters who might be coming to the waterfront to the restaurant, dock and dine. The scope would be to go through a schematic design phase with representatives of the village. Once we have selected a plan, we would use those schematic designs to prepare applications for permits, which, as you probably know, are required from DEC, the Army Corps of Engineers, coastal consistency determination from Department of State, and that process normally takes about 3-4 months. And when we have a reasonable assurance that the regulatory agencies would be approving what we propose, we could simultaneously start the preparation of bid documents, and that would probably take around 2-3 months. And the end result would be that we would have permits and bid documents that would be ready for the village to use or to employ to obtain additional grant money. My background is I'm an architect, but I used to be New York City's assistant port commissioner, and for the last 40 years or so we've been doing, in addition to the architecture and planning, we do a lot of waterfront design work. We have just completed a schematic design for the rebuilding of the Newburgh Landing Pier. We have done a private pier in Queens for the Malba Association, which was a pier in a small marina, very similar to what this might look like. And we do a lot of, we just did a $3 million temporary dock, which will be used in connection with the New York Wheel project. The components of the wheel are going to be brought by ocean-going vessels to a marine terminal in Brooklyn, then barged over to Staten Island and rolled onto this temporary dock and onto the site. Any questions?
Well, I guess we need a little understanding of what would be the, I mean, we've got the bid documents to move forward, but what would be the, we very much like to see this happen, and.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as you said before, Ed, that the idea is kind of create a shovel-ready scenario here, where
Yes.
where all the plans are in place, and we would go out.
Permits
I mean,
and bid documents.
Right. In other words, everything would be available, and the idea would be to hopefully get some money from the state or the federal government or somebody to get to make something happen. They have a similar situation at Chattamook, and Chattamook's picking up a big portion of that, but they also got a large grant to cover half the cost. So. I think it's a good idea to go forward with it. I like the idea of a shovel-ready project. The waterfront's important. I think that improvement would be a very important step in creating visibility and access, really, to our waterfront for larger vessels coming up and down the river. So.
I know from experience this is the type of project that Department of State and DEC look favorably upon. We were the design architects and engineers for the village of Greenport. They did a major reconstruction of 2 piers and a marina for transient vessels, and that got a significant amount of funding from Department of State.
Okay, well, that would be exciting.
There's also money from the federal government. The Ocean Wildlife Agency actually has quite a bit of money, which is pretty much the pot of money that Chattamook got came from that particular fund. So this is something, again, that we could potentially apply for in the future.
So it sounds like if we move forward with this stage, and there's really nothing that's being asked of the village at this point to move forward from this stage, that there are a lot of opportunities where we might be able to get funding to really make this happen, and that would be very
think so.
exciting. Okay, good.
And my understanding is we already have the money committed. It's in the budget already to, the
What
portion.
the village has no
The
money.
village
Yeah,
has
we-
no,
It's a grant, and they're matching it, and then what
Oh, they're picking up the
what
excess.
more their
Oh,
needs,
so
they're
this doesn't
taking
cost
care of
us-
it.
this
This costs
doesn't
us
cost any
nothing. We
money.
say, this sounds great. Thank you very much. We look forward to having
Go on
something
for
in hand to
resolution
be
for
able
next
to go out to look for some more funding to really make it happen for us. Okay,
Thank you, Ed.
thank you. That's exciting.
Just to conclude the dock proposal work, obviously, it's a contract between Weinstein Architects and the village. I presume the village will be favorable of accepting resolution, at least engaging in the work at their next meeting. I would like to express some sense of urgency to the work that needs to be done. I'd like, from that point on, Ed to immediately, work with the village planning staff and potentially for the next meeting, come in with a concept, outline more of the pathway and the sequence that needs to be done. I'm not necessarily familiar myself at how a village approves its own project. I'm sure the village planning staff can discuss that a little further. But the reason I say urgency is because probably in the realm of July, if we can be somewhat close to a construction-ready project in terms of our approval pathways and development of the design documents, that's really our threshold for the next round of funding for construction. So we'd like to be able to try to achieve that application, at least for the next round of construction funding, which is around July. So if we could I just wanted everyone to be clear that we'd like to try to accelerate the process of the design phase.
And what you need from us is just passing a resolution to encourage you to be able to move
Well,
forward.
this opens up the door, I guess, and effectuates the proposal, engages Ed in the contract, and then it's for us, I guess, to get on
Well,
our
yeah,
bicycles.
But where's the money?
Corporation Council would need to review the contract, and
Oh.
I would also ask that our new planner be involved, and she have a chance to review, or meet, if you haven't met with her already,
Yep.
make sure that she has a chance to look at it. I mean, I see no reason we couldn't put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I don't know whether that's too small a time, or...
The only thing is that I know that Gareth Huffam had been looking at some additional funding sources, but I'm not sure that that's necessary at this stage. But he's put in another application that he hopes to hear back from soon, but he thinks no by tomorrow. So if there's anything else to consider, then we would know it in time to still be able to move forward with the resolution for next week.
Okay, very good.
Great.
All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. White on we have the kiosk down on the waterfront in the park area. So there's a proposal to address the larger flat panels on the elevation, and there was some suggestion that we could do some sort of historical marker concept, and I think we can discuss that a little further here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dana White. I'm the Ossining Village historian. I'm very pleased to be working with GDC on the kiosk on the Waterfront History Project. This is going to transform the walls of this small building into an outdoor history museum. It's a very exciting project, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. When these walls can talk, they'll tell the story of Ossining and the Hudson River. Am I doing this right?
no, you should, it should be a slideshow and you press enter.
I'm a Mac girl.
Okay. No, because she's got it in the wrong
Okay.
mode.
Yes, I'll tell you when to go.
There we go. No, that's the slide.
Really? Well, okay. Then we'll look at this pretty picture. All the others, I tried to convert it to a, okay.
Oh, where
Well,
are
at least we
they?
have something to look at.
Oh, no.
The kiosk sits on the south side of the waterfront park area. It's a high visibility location and one of the most scenic spots on the entire Hudson River. This is, well, what you would have seen was the eastern approach as you walk in from the commuter lot, but basically you walk in behind the playground and the overpass, and you come up on the kiosk. There will be 8 interpretive panels, each describing a particular slice of waterfront history. The kiosk has 5 sides, so the larger walls will have more than one panel. Basically, when you would have seen all sides of it. But it starts at the front. You can't use the front, obviously, because there's the window there where people will do their business in the kiosk, get coffee or run a kayak or whatever. As you go around the various sides, you'll see especially the south-facing wall is very long and will accommodate 2 to 3 panels. We're still trying to make this work. The panels will be designed and made in Pennsylvania by Panier Graphics and custom mounted on the kiosk. You've seen these interpretive panels every time you go to like a national park or even, a Dobbs Ferry, I think have some at their waterfront, where they show you interesting things about the landscape, either existing or what used to exist. If you go down to Yonkers has a great one on the river for its park. The 8 topics I'm thinking of in rough chronological order would be the settlement period, the early waterfront, which would include a description of the original inhabitants, the Sinks, the transfer of land to the Dutch and English during colonial times, and after the American Revolution, Sing Sing's early days as a river settlement and bustling port. River travel, a look at the waterfront's heyday as a busy port for passengers and goods when the river was a vital conduit north and south. We'll focus on those shipbuilders and steamboat owners who lived here, such as the Jenks family. Sing Sing Prison, of course, will go up the river. The prison has been a looming presence on our waterfront since the 1820s, and we'll talk about its early beginnings through the 20th century when you could hear the cheers from the convict sports events drifting over the prison walls. Probably we'll also describe the 1941 breakout, where a guard was killed and a village policeman lost his life, and basically there was a gunfight that happened only a few yards from this spot. We'll talk about the river as recreation, when it became a place of enjoyment and leisure activity. We'll look at the boat clubs and recreational pastimes from swimming at Crawbucky to ice boating. We'll look at the railroad and Depot Square, how the Hudson River Railway's completion in 1849 changed the way the waterfront worked. It spawned several hotels in Depot Square, including Daly's Phoenix Hotel, which you would have seen a picture of. We'll talk about commercial fishing operations that were based at the waterfront, featuring the legendary Henry Gordine. We'll talk about the industrial era of the waterfront, starting with the Brandreth Pill Works all the way through the 1950s. A time when everything from wire to tires was manufactured here. And finally, we'll look at the waterfront's more recent evolution from gritty utilitarian landscape to modern-day lifestyle playground, punctuated by the arrival of Harbor Square. To ensure accuracy and give the project a sense of community, I'll be reaching out to locals who are deeply knowledgeable in these areas. I like to think I know everything, but I actually don't. Town historian Martha Masidi has agreed to assist with research and feedback. We've worked together on numerous projects. We work very well together. If there's a fact that needs to be run down, she'll do it. The end result should be informative, educational, fun to read, and visually arresting, but not as arresting as that view.
Thank you, Dana.
So what's inside of this building? What is the plan for inside? This is outside the building, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's when we go back to Joe.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation here tonight. I think our next steps with this is when something becomes more material, in terms of the specifics on each panel.
Yeah, that's the next stage. The village just needs to tell me how involved they want to be with what goes on the panels. So of course I'll be doing outlines. If you've seen these panels, they tend to be done in little text blocks and photos. So I imagine we'll do something similar because that's easier for people to read. I mean, it's exciting because you're going to get a lot of people walking by here from the ferry. You're going to have people coming down to use the playground, to, use the park. So I really think that these panels are going to be a really accessible way to understand where the waterfront, what it used to be, what it is now. And it's really been quite a shift and quite an evolution. So, yeah. I think we're looking at the summer to put them up.
Great.
So it's a bit of an accelerated timetable, but I don't think it should be a problem.
Wonderful, thank you.
I have to get in touch with the plaque maker and get a set of deadlines, and we'll start working from there. But I'm well along in the research and the accumulation of photos, some of which you would have seen tonight. But next time I do a presentation, you'll see them, and they'll be there. So I'll do a rundown on what the text would be, what each thing would address. It's all going to be very Austining specific. I mean, it'll be contextualized within the lower Hudson River Valley, but there are things about the Austining waterfront that are unique, and it's not just the prison. But the prison has had an influence on the place. But I think that it's certainly got lots to say. It used to be a main commercial port for this area, for people and goods. Farmers would bring their goods to market here. So it's going to be, I think, a really, really fun and neat project. I'm thrilled to be doing it. So.
Well, thank you,
Great.
Dana. We're very
Thank you.
excited for it.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing the photos that you tried to share with us tonight. I'm sorry for the technical limitations.
Okay, so once those concepts are prepared, we'll come back in for another work session and present those concepts.
Okay.
Last item on the list here tonight for Harbor Square is, obviously the project is nearing the finish line. So we're getting close and things are moving along very nicely. We are extremely well coordinated with village staff, both village staff and the village consulting staff, third-party staff, throughout the course of the construction of the project. So with that being said, there's been a monthly focus on making sure that all the site plan conditions and site plan conditions and the resolutions and all the LADA elements have been addressed and are nearing the finish line for conclusion. With that being said, there's 3, we'll call them site plan modifications that I'd like to bring to the board's attention tonight. As you know, the site plan resolution gives some level of latitude to village staff and village engineer to make subtle design tweaks in the field as conditions arise for the construction of the project. I don't lose the slides, so we're back to the maps here. So as you know, here's the Harbor Square project, the overall site plan. So there's the 3 basic changes I'm talking about that didn't appear on the originally approved set. There's been some grading modifications to the north side of the site along the Sing. Along the Sing Sing Kill. The grading modifications are in the form of a 3-foot-high gabion basket wall. It's a wired basket that's filled with stone. The intention of those grading modifications were to soften the plateau that was along the building and improve accessibility. As you recall, in the original site plan, it was a fairly steep sloped, very steep slope that comes up the building. So we wanted to soften that grade to there. All the work that was done here obviously was coordinated with the village staff and with the village technical engineer because we wanted to pay certain attention to any impacts to the floodplain. Obviously, all this construction that occurred with this gabion basket installation was elevated above the floodplain elevations and a variety of cross sections and whatnot. Were provided and studied. So just to ensure the fact that there's no adverse impact from that, installing that grading condition. So that's item number 1.
So, Abe, who in the village is managing this for us?
Actually,
When he keeps referring to the village,
we're
who?
working village engineer, planner, and the consulting engineer that we have.
Okay.
From Kellogg's.
Who's designated the project, Calvert Sessions, third-party engineer. So this was the one modification that we thought may be prudent to discuss with the board and have the board aware of that modification.
Joe, just one question. I'm wondering if we could get, electronic versions of the renderings that you have here, just so we can get a chance to take a look at them.
Ultimately, this is for presentation tonight, so I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Ultimately, what's going to develop here is there's going to be an amended set, per se, of drawings that indicate these changes. So we'll provide an amended set. The sets will be bubbled. It'll be followed with all the technical backup, letters, certifications of each of these changes in the design of the project. And ultimately, I believe, with the discussion with Corporation Council, it's best to codify this in a resolution that acknowledges these changes. And
Yeah, but the problem is I can't understand what you're saying. I mean,
We don't have any.
I don't know what I'm looking
I
at.
understand. So tonight I'm doing a presentation, which is going to come in a submission now, a formal set of drawings here.
Okay.
With these engineered letters and certifications and all that other stuff.
Because the resolution eventually will need to reference those revised drawings. So he's coming with the list of the things that will need to be included in those revised drawings to just give you a heads up as to the drawings that you'll get versions of.
Okay?
Okay.
So the second item was there was some conversation about the final plans for the westerly improvement.
I think we need to just take just a little more because I'm not sure we can see. Give me one second.
I didn't know where the camera was.
The cameras are everywhere.
Okay.
We have multiple cameras.
Okay, so, as you know, we had scheduled improvements along Westerly, which were predominantly curb and paving and some reconfiguration of parking spaces. So the essence of the original site plan has essentially stayed the same. Modifications occurred in further discussion after site plan approval, where we had discussed putting a walk along that, the train station fence. That walk is also going to be coupled with a crosswalk at the northern end of the property, which connects to the sidewalk coming over to Kilbrook. And there's some handicap ramp work that needs to be done down near the train station. So the major change to the westerly improvement plan is the integration of the sidewalk, which was a topic of discussion, and we ran into some delay, so to speak, with Metro North, but I think we've got all the details worked out now, and
We do?
except for the crosswalk, that's why I don't have the final set of plans here yet, because they're just checking out some grading and some pitch of this handicap walk, the engineers, the village consulting engineer and our engineer. So that should be worked out here momentarily. We just discussed it in our meeting yesterday. So,
But the MTA sidewalk, that's all a go?
yeah, what had to happen is we didn't move the fence. You know, we had talked about moving the fence. So now the sidewalk is of smaller size. So it's a monolithic sidewalk and curb. I think it's approximately 3.5 feet. So it does provide some level of pedestrian usage that's outside of the street. And I think that was ultimately the big concern here.
Did that change the parking, the number of parking spaces?
No, because they're parallel parking on that side of the street.
Okay.
So they run parallel with the parking. And lastly, we want to talk about the kiosk, which we just got done talking about the markers. As we all know, the kiosk is there on the site. After we had the approved site plan, the general feature layout, we had come in for several presentations on the park and the park features and the sculptures and all the elements of the park. I think we came in during work sessions and there was discussion on those, and then obviously work continued out in the field. Well, looking back at the originally approved plans, you know, there were some different notions for this area, which not necessarily codified. On a previously existing approved site plan, it used to be a kayak launch or something that was going on here in the corner. So somewheres along our park design discussion, obviously the kiosk was the added element, which is constructed. It's there now. We just saw the photos of it. But that kiosk, and it's permitted. There's a permit for this particular structure. It's not on the original site plan set of drawings. Along with that kiosk, obviously, there were some grading modifications, which we're also aware of, along this southerly property boundary here. The kiosk itself, for those who haven't been down there to see it, looks approximately like it did in the picture. These are the historic markers that Ms. White was discussing. It's in its own little plaza area. The kiosk is intended, as your earlier question may have asked. It has a restroom facility. It has a vending area. This is supposed to be a carry-in type vending operation for park events, so that if someone wanted to bring in things in coolers or have any kind of service ready, food or beverage, that they could utilize this facility to do that. There's no cooking or grilling or anything of that nature going on in the kiosk.
And who maintains the kiosk?
Well, we have an overall obligation to maintain the park for a period, I believe, of 10 years, correct? Yeah, 10 years. So, after the 10-year period is up, with the exception of, since this was topic of the
No, but I mean, so vendors come in, they pay rent, people, I mean, who's in charge of all this?
It's really to be decided. This goes back to like the programming of the park and events, and, I don't know if there's necessarily been a lot of discussion exactly on how that's all going to work.
I'm sorry, what do
So
we-
could it be rented out to a vendor? It could be
Could be.
rented out to somebody who
Could be. I
runs a
think
coffee
ultimately,
shop and wants
ultimately
to
it's the
sell to.
village's decision on how, events are going to be programmed here.
The village board,
Chris, will he be managing, will Chris be managing this kiosk, or?
it is within the park, so ultimately it will fall within recreation's responsibility, but if it's going to be rented out or licensed out on a yearly basis, it has to go before the board. So the board will have a decision, be part of the decision-making as to who's using it and what kind of charges, the entity will be paying to the village for the use of it.
So somebody could sell coffee to morning commuters and sell ice cream in the afternoon and sell hot dogs at dinner, and
It could. I don't know,
it's a lot happening in one of the kiosks, but the idea is, well, I never have to leave. Okay.
So anyways, getting back to the maintenance, we maintain the park for a period of 10 years, with the exception of the northerly property line along the Sing Sing Kill. We, even though the village ultimately will own that strip of land behind the building, we maintain that in perpetuity. So,
I just want to confirm, when you first started talking about the change in plans for the northern side of the property, which is along the Kill.
Yes.
Is that being preserved? Because I don't have a strong sense of what that's going to look like with the gibbon basket. Now, is that going to preserve the accessibility for the pedestrian walkway visually and?
it improves the accessibility because the steep slope created a pinch point along the building, and it was really not pedestrian friendly or inviting for that matter. So basically, the grading change was a field change, as many of these subtle changes are, but we thought it prudent, to bring to the board as a grading change with this 3-foot-high gabion basket. And what'll happen is there'll be plantings on the backside of the basket, vines and things of that nature, which will droop over the basket eventually in its final form. I mean, I'm sure you've seen these things somewheres along your travels, along a highway or somewheres. It's, 3-foot-high kind of grid box filled with riprap stones.
Okay.
Structurally sound,
Okay.
so. But anyways, those are the 3 changes. So I wanted to have this little discussion on this tonight. We'll follow up. I'll work with Lynn on the amended set with all the engineering correspondence attached. We'll submit that to the board, and then we can have further discussion and move forward from there.
I have some questions about the park and such, but do people want to ask anything about the plan?
I'm sorry, I have questions about the dock. So like kayaks, which originally, whatever, I don't know who approved all this because I wasn't here, but, I mean, it looks great. So people want to go kayaking or want to use the dock, not with the boats. There's space for that? There isn't space for that anymore? It's a park. I mean, how do people use the water at this point, besides walking and looking at it? Is there some space made for that?
Well, usually the kayak, the best place to really launch a kayak is on the beach, which is, farther down the way. I mean, there was the idea where, I think some of the initial ideas was that there would be a place to store kayaks right around this area next to the Boat and Canoe Club.
Right.
But from a practical perspective, it's a lot easier to launch a kayak from a beach area right along there than necessarily in the area where we were thinking of storing the kayaks. So, I mean, and besides, there's already kayak storage on the park beach anyway. That already exists in the town park there. So, that was certainly something that was considered, but I think the problem got resolved another way. So.
I see you nodding, Chris. Did you want to add to that? Superintendent of
I
Parks and
guess it comes under
Recreation.
your world, right?
I just wanted to say that in terms of the plans here and those discussions, again, that predates,
I wasn't part of that, that predates me. But as John said, in terms of a general kayak launch, that we have an area, and that is appropriate and probably more suited for that. So, again, I don't know if there were intentions or design intentions to have a kayak launch at this site, but it certainly sounds like there's still mostly storage. Okay, but there's not, and then we do have some storage down at the southern end of the beach. So, but just to some points in terms of the park and programming, certainly the rec department is excited about the opportunity to have this park and to have an opportunity to program out events and other activities in this park. So we're excited about that. And again, with the kiosk, in terms of talk about concession and possible vendors in there, again, it would be a new conversation that we could have and kind of explore what might be best suited for there. But so the rec department is excited for the overall program management going on in the park.
Thank you. Any other questions about the
No.
site?
Yeah, Joe, thank you for bringing some of the items to our attention. I understand that there are site conditions in every construction field out there. But just to refresh my memory, to refresh some of the members and the village board, can you refresh what was originally approved in a site plan the last time that you were here? Can you refresh our memories on that?
Which approval were we taught, the original
The
site
last
plan?
one. The last one.
Most recent one.
Was the kiosk part of that
No.
approval?
Well, it was not on the physical site plan, and that's really
Correct.
what the issue
So,
is here.
let me ask you something, because you brought up, and this is for our staff as well as a general comment or as a general question, so you constructed the kiosk.
Yeah.
It's there. We saw the photos. We've
It is.
seen it physically, whoever has worked on waterfront. So you built something without an approval.
Well, I can answer this, I guess, to some extent. I mean, I think we had the site plan was generally approved, and there was a generality made conceptually. It was conceptually approved on the park level. So we had come back to several meetings regarding each sculpture, the kiosk, well, for presentation at workshop. I think everyone was in concurrent at those meetings, and there was really no commentary back and forth. The problem was we had never codified those specific changes on the amended site plan.
And I understand that there was an understanding that, you were supposed to come back and show us the kiosk part of the site plan, and we will be amending the site plan at that time.
Uh-huh.
But that did not happen, correct?
There was no formal amendment done on the
Correct.
kiosk, no.
So,
Yeah.
so pretty much what you bring in to us is what you're going to bring at the end of the project is an as-built condition set as a part of the approval if any other element changes from here until you guys finish the project.
Yeah, I mean, these are the three major items that we're discussing tonight that staff felt should be addressed with the board, and the plan should be, amended accordingly.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure that there is understanding that the kiosk was talked about it was brought up to our attention, but it was never physically approved by the board when it was, after submission, it was built afterwards.
We never formally updated the site plan
Correct.
after the kiosk design was decided on. But I sat right there in that chair 2 years ago and looked at
Yeah.
the
No, we did.
proposed suggested changes, and there was agreement among all of us in the room at the time that that would be a nice addition to the park. We just never went through the formal process of approving the new site plan.
No, I just want to make that clear.
I just
No,
didn't
no,
want to
I'm-
sound like
I
they
am
were
aware.
like
No, 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 no.
going rogue and
No,
just like
no.
building stuff
I just
without
want to make sure that was.
letting us
I
know.
do, even though it's just physically not on that amended set, I do want to say that we followed all the standard protocol in constructing this, got the building permit, had all our inspections, went through the remainder of the process. It just didn't show up.
It didn't come to us before any of
Yeah.
that stuff happened.
We never went to the board for formal resolution, correct.
Okay. So, ladies' room, men's room, food inside, history on the outside. Is that what this is?
Basically.
Okay.
Now, are there other changes besides the Sing Sing Hill walkway that is, now has a new design, and the kiosk. Are there other
The
changes to the site
kiosk and
plan?
the westerly notations that I made along Westerly Road there.
Yes. the sidewalk.
And, you know, we're talking about grading was fine-tuned on Westerly based on existing conditions, and things may have changed a tenth, of a foot, so I don't, unless Paul has anything else to add about site plan changes.
I mean, I know that there was decisions made about walls and fences, and that's all come as the project is moving forward. You realize we need to do a little bit different here and a little different there, and I assume that's all going to be reflected in the new plan.
Yes, the as-built plan is going to reflect what exists in the field. I think this is a best summary of the major components that were changed. With these components, there were ancillary changes to the grading, to the layout of certain other parameters that were in the original site plan. And the breakdown, if you will, that I think you're referring to, was it came back to you in a plan view with not a lot of detail and no grading concerns. It got incorporated into the building permit because there were no details, you didn't refer it back to planning like you did the first one. So it never made its way into a formal planning board change or review. So we ended up, to some extent, reviewing it retroactively in the field. But I will tell you that as far as the structures are concerned, they did pull a building permit for the kiosk pre-construction. The monuments had a building permit. The playground had a building permit. And the grading was re-reviewed to see if it, by our consultant engineer and myself, to see if it met all our MS4 requirements and et cetera within its area of construction. So there were some utility changes too that were necessitated by that. There was a new sanitary line that came out from the kiosk. We had to do some moving around at the interface with our utilities and where it goes onto the private parcel and the easement.
Lots of electrical outlets in this construction?
I really don't know the electrical layout. I know there is an electrical plan submitted with the lighting and the outlets for the park, but I can't speak to it. Yeah, that was also a separate permit and reviewed by our
Staff?
consultant. No, we
Oh, that's right, we had a consultant for this.
that's reviewed by outside consultants.
Okay.
So,
All right.
going back to the site plan and everything else in the project, how far, what is the deadline at this point? When are you guys open?
Okay, so we're targeting occupancy, which will be our first partial C of Os this June.
June
Yeah,
2016.
yes.
He said this June.
Hey, you never know. Believe me.
So, did
Okay.
you have more to add to that? Because that was
No.
where I was going with my
Yes,
next
go ahead.
questions. So part of this plan, part of the LATA, the legal agreement that we have, is that you're going to get your partial C of O and you'll have people moving in, but eventually you'll have your final C of O for both the apartments and the restaurant.
Yes.
And there's a lot of components that need to come into play before you get your final C of O.
Yes.
And it's only after you get the final C of O that the parkland or the park area will be formally given back to the village.
Yeah, it's
Correct?
prior to the final C of O that has to.
prior
has
to the
be
final
done.
C of O.
Now, just so I can update everyone on that, as you recall, last April, I received the approval for the subdivision plat, the amendment to the subdivision plat from the planning board, which incorporated that additional donation of land to the village, as we had all discussed and seen. So that's still under the planning board approval. I had recently went back this past month and extended that approval for another year period. We're currently working with village staff on the easements and the detailing of the plat, easements, descriptions, to making sure that it's all worded properly. Ultimately, it's going to have to go back to the planning board chair for signature, and then we'll have to file it at the county. So we'll probably get to the point where we're close to that or ready, and that'll be done prior to the final CO.
Okay. Meanwhile, we've already exchanged some emails about potentially doing a formal unveiling of the lovely statue, the
Yes.
angel statue that's being dedicated
Oh, that's what it's
to
called?
the fire department that's out
Yes.
on the point on the north end of the property. And the idea is to be able to do that. Well, originally I was saying July 4th, but maybe we could even do it a little sooner, at the end of June, and we have to pick a date for that. No?
Sometime this summer.
Well, if you're going to have people moving in June,
Yeah, the area will be finished. It's just a matter of coordinating the event and when we all see fit that we want to have the event.
Well, then the other question would be, we have gone ahead and we're looking forward to all of the really terrific historic markers around the kiosk. We also are looking forward to having the park itself open to the public. So when would the timeline for that be? Can we have the park open to the public while before it becomes village property?
Yeah, I mean, I would see no reason for that. We had the temporary park, condition in the past that
Great.
incorporated both the village frontage and the land we retained.
Great.
So I think we would fall into those same parameters, or whatever we have to work out with that. I'm not, from your
Yeah, is there some sort of legal document that needs to be drawn
There
out?
would be an exchange of insurance and indemnification and the like, so,
Okay.
yes.
So then could we do the, I don't know, Chris, have you ordered the Henry Gordon Park signs, or do you have an estimation on if they would be available for a June opening, if we were able to?
Yeah, the request went in. I haven't gotten the proposal back, but the last turnaround was a few weeks on the similar sign.
Okay. So it would be lovely if the park were open sometime in June, as well as we do the dedication of the angel statue sometime in June.
Yep.
And then, because you maintain the park for the next several years, even, obviously, you're maintaining it when you own it, but even when it becomes village property, it'll be your maintenance. So I guess my question would be, on June 30th, we have a wonderful event here on the Ossining waterfront. We have our fireworks. And I'm sure that there would be many people who would enjoy being able to take, advantage of this lovely location to spend that evening on June 30th. That's a lot of people that will be there. They may leave some trash behind. Is that our park staff that comes and cleans up, or do you have a staff that's going to take care of that?
I have to reread where we left off with maintenance. It's been some time ago, but I'm sure we'll work that out and whatever needs to be done with the trash.
Okay.
I don't know if we got into that level of detail and responsibility on
Well,
the permanent maintenance. I know in the temporary maintenance, we handled that when we had the temporary park opened up. So under that condition, yes.
Well, I guess the question is, what's the 10-year maintenance involved? What is it really, how is it defined,
That's what I
right?
have to read back on. Because
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that on July 1st, somebody's cleaning it up, and I
Yeah.
want to make sure somebody knows who's supposed
Well,
to.
July
show up and do
1st,
what.
2016 through
Yeah.
2026, I'm assuming, is the real question.
In the prior years, before the park was shut down, I mean, the rec staff would clean up the whole
But
area.
that's a different scenario.
We do not own that property.
Right.
Oh.
And it doesn't
And
matter.
we do not maintain that property even when we own it.
But let me just, I understand that, but, in the prior events that have taken place, before they closed the park off to do all this work, when they had the fireworks and everything else, the rec crews would come out and they would pick up. I mean, that's what they did before. I mean, I'm just saying that that's what happened.
Okay.
Now, whether that's what we're doing now, I don't know. I'm just saying.
And I don't know if that was reflected in the ladder, or if the ladder was in
Yeah,
effect at that
if
point.
I could just, now that we're getting close to summer, and we do have just a moment here, a month or two,
Yeah.
and we're talking about the more permanent opening, we'll call it, of this substantial portion of the park, I'd like to take the next review meeting with staff, and we'll make sure we
Yeah.
have all these issues ironed out, and then we'll come back and have a little more.
Well, when you have a day with 75 degrees, you start thinking about people,
Everyone's
walking.
there already.
Seriously, I'd be there if I could, to be honest. But the daily maintenance is a big issue.
Yes, absolutely. And then we can address that at the next progress meeting with GDC. But I think what's important here is for us to be able to use the park as for the 4th of July celebration.
Yes.
Which is June 30th.
Yep. Have that written down.
I think there'll be two phases. There'll be a memorandum of understanding for the phase prior to the subdivision and the deed transfer, and then there'll also be a maintenance. I think the intention was we would draft a detailed maintenance agreement going forward, which would rights and obligations of both parties incorporated. So, but in the meantime, we'll get an MOU in place and have a temporary park availability.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so you have another meeting, you just had a meeting yesterday, so.
We have it monthly.
Right, so it's going to be almost a month, so maybe by then you'll have be ready to, that'll be April,
Yes.
Yeah.
so.
So, I mean, we work offline, too. It's not
Yes,
just
I
at the meeting.
figured
So.
you would show up there with having done some
Yeah. No,
preparation,
so we
yes.
can
Okay.
prepare, and hopefully by next month's work session, be prepared to discuss this a little more in
Okay, great.
detail, how we're handling it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any questions before we let Joe and Dana and show the briefing. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So, we're about 20 minutes behind, so,
That's it?
it's, do you want to follow the agenda, or do you want to?
Can we take a 2-minute break? Is that okay? All right, we'll take a 2-minute bathroom break. Bathroom, coffee, whatever you need to get. There is coffee back there.
All right.
We're going to get started.
We have 3. We have a quorum. Let's go.
And
We only need 3 votes. Let's go.
Of course, now I feel like going to get coffee. You know that I yelled at everybody. All righty.
Okay.
We're good, Tom? All right, thank you very much, and we're back.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item on the agenda, we're going to skip actually the Broadway Bridge. We're going to rearrange it. We have representatives from Sharamuk Yacht Club, Patrick Yost, who's going to present to the board a project that they got funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And actually, he's seeking for the village to provide a letter of support for the DEC. So with that,
thank you very much. Pat Yost, so I'm the Vice President from Shadow Yacht Club. Village resident, live over in behind the high school up on Overton Road. With me tonight, we've got a couple of other people from the club. Peter Farrow, who's been helping us and very, very important in terms of the whole permitting and the, very important to us. And then we've got the president here as well, David Westcott, okay? We'll go through, what we'd like to do is to give you, we actually started this process 3 years ago with the initial submission to the New York State and the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife for a boating infrastructure grant. And we're actually getting to the point where we're very, very close at this point. So we wanted to go, and we've got some specific requests, okay? First of all, for those who don't know, what is Shadow? We're down on the waterfront. It's a membership-based, family-oriented facility with boat slips and moorings. There's a beach for launching kayaks and small craft. We've also got a pool down there. We are a nonprofit. We're a 501c7. So from that perspective, we're actually not allowed to turn a profit from an IRS perspective. We've been part of the Ossining Waterfront since 1846, so we've been around for quite a long time. We've got a sailing academy down there. It's generally considered the area's top junior sailing school for people. We own the property where the boathouse restaurant is, so the operators from that lease it from us. Marine One, the Ossining Marine Unit usually is parked down there. In case you were wondering where that ever is, we host the Sea Scouts and Ferry sloops. Okay, it's right down on the waterfront. So what this project is all about is, and we've got pictures in the back of your packet for you to take a look at, but there's been a pressing need to do 2 things. One is to replace some failing, ineffective, and sunken barges that have been on the waterfront for over 50 years at this point. And then the second piece that we really wanted to do is try and work, this was the whole genesis of the boating infrastructure grant, was to increase access for transient boaters along the Hudson, and specifically to Ossining. Fundamentally, what the project is it's the installation of floating concrete wave attenuators. These things are massive. They're about 60 feet long, 4 feet high, 12.5 feet wide, concrete. And believe it or not, they float, and they actually attenuate waves. That's pretty impressive. Along with that, there's removal of the sunken barges, so the floating concrete wave attenuators are the replacement for that. The other neat thing is that this is the addition of about 45 transient slips and moorings, which is the public benefit of this whole project, and the fact that those are dedicated to be available for transients, meaning that boats of 26 feet or over who are transiting up the Hudson River, down from Lake Erie, from the Great Lakes, around from New York City, they can come, they can stay here, they'll have access to the club facilities and the town village attractions, as well as transportation and any future potential attractions that could be down at the waterfront, like Sing Sing Museum or something like that. We've been in the process, like I said, for 3 years. We are currently in the permitting process with the New York Department of the DEC, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the OGS. Specifically, what we're looking for, requesting this evening, and that's the purpose of the overview, is the New York State has requested a coastal consistency determination from the village, saying that it's consistent with the village's LWRP. And then the second piece that they've requested is concurrence from the village with our plans to place the transient moorings in publicly owned waters to the west of village-owned lands underwater. All right, so those are the two things that they specifically requested. Okay. Talked a little bit about this. So we received a federal grant. It was competitive. It was a nationally competitive grant. We were one of 14 awarded during that year, the only one in New York. Leveraging the existing infrastructure and putting in, like I said, over 45 transient moorings and slips that are available for public use. We're using the environmentally friendly floating docks and floating wave attenuators instead of putting basically wave blocks that go all the way down to the water, so it allows for free flow of tidal flow and current. The other kind of neat thing, and I'll show you that from a design perspective, is that the way that this is designed, there's a 300-foot contiguously long area of docks, which are in deep water, so 7 feet minimum depth at low tide, which means that you can, during events, you can park a boat like a Clearwater or something out there for the public events, and we would work with the town and the village to make sure that we'd figure out how to make sure that happens. Okay. The design has been it's been designed to withstand a 100-year storm surge and a direct hit from hurricane. So we've designed to make it stick. Okay. For those who aren't familiar with the club, this is the facility. Down here in the bottom right is the Boathouse Restaurant. That's probably the most recognizable component of the place. Most people, you'd be amazed at how many people don't know this is actually down there. The pool, the existing clubhouse, existing timber piers, and this is the layout of the marina. Down here underneath this is where Westerly is. These are the 3 failing barges that are included as part of the plan. These have been there, some for over 50 years. This one was originally a World War II troop transport circle liner that's now sunk, and these were originally barges. The change is that from there, what we would do is we would, and if you follow the red light, the existing barges are here, here, and here. So we would take those out. We would shift the Chatham specific docking units a little bit to the west, just to give a little bit more clearance. This is where we would build the specific wave attenuator and the transient boating facilities. So it extends further out. This is the 324 feet of 12-foot wide docking space that would be, flat and available for larger vessels. All of these on the inside are available for transients. And then this is another piece of wave attenuator, which is simply there in order to protect the marina from southwesterly winds and waves. Okay. I'll show you these are the mooring field would be out here a little bit.
And where would the Clearwater, for example?
So the Clearwater would be able to go along the outside here. Okay. If you look these little numbers, so we had part of the engineering that we did is we had a bathymetric survey done, which gives how deep is it at low tide. So this is a 7.5 foot deep line, and then the next one is a 7 foot deep line. So the Clearwater should be able to go like along here, and then there's a 12 foot long. The wave attenuator would go along here. This would be an ADA compliant ramp up into the timber pier, and then that just goes out into Westerly Road from there. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. This kind of steps back a little bit further to give you a little bit of sense. So the club is down here, the train station is right down here, and the 2 bridges down over the train tracks. This is the southernmost one with Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, and this is the Snowden Avenue Bridge up here. So the mooring field that we would put in over time is, and these look large, but they're over-designed. Basically, they're over-designed so that you can put a 40-foot boat there on a mooring, and there's no overlap. Most mooring fields are designed so that there is overlap, and they're designed for somewhat smaller boats. So there's a significant amount of capacity there for larger boats to come up and dock and stay for a while as well. Okay. Specifically, the lands underwater that are owned by the village are, this is a plot that we don't own, but we have a long-term lease for, that's existing from the Brants. And they're okay, then, so that's under our control. So we don't need anything from that perspective. The two village plots that are would be located right here.
Did you say they're underwater? What did?
Yes. Yeah. So believe it or not, so if you go and you look at a tax map, Chatham has 4 plots that we're currently paying taxes on. 2 of those are for lands underwater, and they're actually taxed at a different rate than the overwater land. So, but the fact is that the village owns these 2, and since these are in public land, publicly owned public waters, so technically this is, under control of the state out here, but it is in front of your plots of land underwater. We need permission to put the moorings there.
Right, so the plots of land underwater is owned by the village?
Some of it.
The 2 plots, which means we can build on that if we wanted to?
I doubt it.
It means you can
Thinking
install
multi-million-dollar
you can
condos.
install aquatic facilities such as mooring fields there.
So this is the tax map right here. I'm sorry I didn't bring more copies, but I have it on the computer.
Okay.
Just stay in the microphone, just so everybody can hear you. Thanks so much.
I just handed a copy of a portion of the tax map to the trustee. The village owns or has title to or rights to several tax parcels to the north of Chatham-Uck's controlled parcels. They extend out into the water a couple hundred feet, and they end basically at the water's edge or the railroad tracks, depending on the line. And they are owned by the village. So they come with all the rights that normal property ownership come with, including the right to access the river from those parcels. And so the Department of State is asking us for permission to install these mooring fields west of that land, so not interfering with your right to access that resource, the Hudson River, in the future, but just because it is west of your land and not land that we control. It's an odd, archaic thing.
Ancient rights, yes.
It is. These surveys are fascinating.
So, any questions? Thanks. That's why he's here. He knows all the rules. Okay?
And just so we're clear that the Environmental Advisory Council has, Lynn can speak to that, but they've already taken up the issue of the consistency with your LWRP.
They met last week, and they basically came to the conclusion that it's in compliance with our LWRP.
It is in
Yes,
compliance.
it is in compliance, yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, actually, if the board would like, I did receive an email this afternoon from Jeff Smith. I could read it. It's very brief. Joe, I would love to attend and would try to do so, but I am tied up and may not make it. Overall, you can share with the village board, if I can't make it, that the EAC was satisfied that SYC dock and breakwater expansion, as well as the additional mooring placements, are consistent with the LWRP. Jeff Smith.
Good. Thank you.
So the remaining request is for a letter, so we would need to authorize, I would suggest, put that in a formal resolution for next week. Just authorize an execution or a signature on a letter. If you're amenable, that you have no opposition to the mooring field on navigable waterways adjacent to the property that is under your control.
And just to add that the Department of State is the one that's requesting, obviously, the local consistency determination. And they said they'll take it in any form that, they'll take the consistency determination in the normal form you grant it, and then the permission to install the mooring field in any form you'd like, whether it's in that determination or separately.
I think that maybe if the board can, as the Corporation Council mentioned, pass a resolution so this way the letter can be sent, and that will also include statements, including a statement, the fact that the project is in fact in compliance with the LWRP, so that it's all in one document.
Right, that it has been reviewed by the
Correct.
Environmental Advisory Council, and we thank the Environmental Advisory Council for taking that up and looking through it. The LWRP is a pretty lengthy document, so there's a lot to consider as they go line by line to make sure it it's compliant, and
We definitely thank you and your staff for reviewing this and doing it so quickly and helpfully.
is next Wednesday soon enough for us to pass a resolution in support of this?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know how
Absolutely.
sensitive sensitive things can
That'd
be.
be fantastic.
Yeah, the DEC and the Army Corps had the permits out for public comment. The public comment period closed last Friday. They received a couple comments from other federal agencies and one or two concerned citizens. I haven't seen them all yet, but they've indicated to me they're not major. And so the next step is wrapping up all of the consistency determinations, coordination with the other agencies, so they can issue the permits.
Well, it does seem like we should know what the other comments were, since to have the benefit of that before we pass a resolution, just to make sure there's not something we aren't considering.
Absolutely.
Although generally, this sounds like it's very much consistent with our desire to see community members and people who want to visit Ossining to take full advantage of our beautiful location on the Hudson River. So thank you very
We'll
much.
be happy to send those to you as
Great.
we receive them.
Thank you for spearheading this very exciting project. I look forward to seeing it move forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I guess we'll just ask Corporation Counsel and Village Management to get us those comments so we can review them, and expecting that there's not going to be something earth-shattering in them, probably be able to move forward with the document as you described, Manager Zambrano. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a request from St. Anne's Church to request permission to conduct processions during 2016, and together with the agenda, we have forwarded to the board the list of processions with the dates, and we also requested for Father Byrne to provide us with the route of the processions. We already had the one that's going to be held on Good Friday, which is March 25th, and then subsequent to that, we receive the rest of the processions on the projected routes. So before you, Father Byrne is here actually to talk to the board and just give you more details.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us. We have, as you know, a history of liking to walk around and to pray out loud, and we do that regularly. For example, Palm Sunday, which is celebrated by Christians all over, we process, but from Ellis Place, the back of the church, around the street. We have an interesting ceremony if you'd like to see it. The Hispanic community meets in the parking lot area, and the English-speaking people are out in the fields, and we greet one another and wish each other well, and then we go to Mass in English and in Spanish. But that's a simple enough procession around the block. We have a couple that are around the block. The Filipino is around the block. St. Lucy and St. Michael is around the block. Some of them are more complicated. So Good Friday is it's really kind of a tremendously big event, and it does attract people from other places. People call us from Croton and other places, Pleasantville, are you going to do that procession again? And they really do enjoy it. We get a lot of coverage usually from Channel 12 and others, and put a lot of time and effort into it. The people prepare it well. We do have more than 100 men for security. They're all vested and, in these blazers that you can see them everywhere. And they try to help and control the people, and we try to instruct the people as well to be very well behaved, but there's so many people and they all want to see what's happening that sometimes we get into crowd situations. So they've limited the areas where they are going to stop and have what they call the Way of the Cross to just 3 sites. I think by Maurice, by the park, and by Market Square, and then they'll come back to the field, and the final 3 stations will be in the field next to our school.
Is that a different path than in the past?
We usually go either north or south, and this
Oh,
is the
okay.
south route.
Okay.
And
I guess I was thinking of
we
last
used
year's route.
to,
Okay,
we used to
okay.
go
We're
down.
on
Yeah,
Ann.
and Jesus got crucified in front of the Horak Ministries here, and they were very gracious in letting us use that front lawn. But this year is a south route, so we would used to go down Spring, like across Maple, Spring, and and back up eventually through.
James? Is it James?
Yeah. Maurice, yeah, across Maurice and then back. So this is a south here, and we try to, that way everybody gets a chance to see it. The north one we go up Yale and Dale, like that. I don't know if you have any specific questions about this. I tried to, there are some that we don't have exactly the route, like Unión y Fe. That was the original Niño Dios, Divine Child group. But then there's so many people involved there, it became two groups. And we tried to have them come together, and I think there are several groups that did join to make it fewer processions. Well, we're conscious that there's a lot of them, and we don't want to create confusion, but the people are very anxious to do these celebrations. So they mean a lot to them. They're very involved. You'll see them all get dressed up in typical costume for the events, and they're moments of special prayer is what they are, and it's done publicly.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I guess my only question would be just to hear from the chief of police to understand coordination and
okay.
what's going to happen there. I this is part of our village. It's part of our culture here to do the parade. So I'm certainly been in support of it in the past. I just want to make sure that everybody's safe and that we have coordination with the police department. So.
Good evening, everybody. We took a look at this, and a lot of this we're very familiar with. We're doing most of these processions for a number of years. The one thing that we did notice that changed, there's a number of processions that say that they're going from Nelson Park to the church. We do have some concerns about that crossing Route 9. The manpower issues that we have, staffing issues with getting people across Route 9 is one issue, but also that it does create a significant traffic concern, in addition to the fact that there's a safety concern with just taking that many people across Route 9. The last time we did a procession across Route 9, not including the Good Friday one, we closed the road for, I think, 10 or 15 minutes to get everybody across. Some of the processions are larger than others, so we have concerns about the traffic and the safety. We prefer the routes that what we've in the past called the Little Route, which is around Linden Avenue, Eastern Avenue, Ellis Place, and back into the church. We can fit quite a few people in there. It tends to be easier staffing-wise, and it's a heck of a lot safer. So if we had any input, it would just be that we try to limit how many times we cross Route 9 for processions.
So what's have we reconciled or do you and the father have an understanding of? Are you in agreement on which parades are doing what, or I mean, what are we? I just want to understand how it gets sorted out to address your concerns. So
I have not heard that concern previously, and I hear it now for the first time.
Well, we hadn't had a chance to discuss this before. It is something that we raise. It's an issue that comes up annually, though. Crossing Route 9 has always been a concern for us. In general, we're trying to keep the processions to areas with lesser traffic and things like that, because even with police officers escorting them, it's still difficult to be in every place at the same time. And we know traffic at South High and Church Street can be tenuous at times, so that's an area we'd like to keep as few pedestrians as possible as far as in the roadway.
Yeah, and if I may, Mayor, one of the things that I would like to recommend, if at all possible, is maybe authorize the Good Friday procession, and then that will give us, I think, an opportunity for us to sit down with Father Byrne and the members of the congregation and see if we can come up maybe with alternate routes, or maybe have diminished or lessen the number of processions that where the police has to be concerned about the members of the congregation crossing the highway, crossing Route 9. I know that that's something, again, that we really haven't had a chance to talk to Father Byrne yet, but I think it's something that maybe if we can sit down and we can, with the police chief, maybe we can come to a solution to the concerns that we have for public safety.
Well, I believe the board needs to approve these,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And, I mean, Father Byrne's done what we asked in years past, which is come to us with the full list for the year so that we're able to ask all of these questions rather than as the seasons come up, oh, there's another one, there's another one. So I do appreciate that you've, laid out all the processions at one time. And I also hear the concerns about the number of processions that are crossing Route 9, and it does seem like there's a greater number that may be crossing Route 9 this year. Or is this typically it, and we've just never seen them all together in this way and been so aware? Because it looks like there's about 6 of them that cross Route 9 over the course of the year.
I get my glasses now.
Sure.
It's too far.
And I guess the question would be, I think everybody's in agreement that it's the police department's role to provide safety, and it's the village, feels strongly to be able to support community events that bring the community together, and raise the spirit of the community in whatever way that may be, and really help people enjoy their lives here in Ossining and gather publicly. But is it possible for people to have the same depth of experience if they do a route that has less traffic interruption, less traffic risk, less demand on the resources, and less potential safety concerns for the folks involved?
Yeah, and I think we're conscious of that, and we realize that it is an important question. What some of the police helped us to do in the past was gather the people. Don't let the procession keep the long distance between one another, but get everybody there in one group, and then try in one group to go across in say 2 or 3 minutes time. And I think for some that certainly is possible. For most of these, except for Good Friday, where there's almost 2,000 people.
That's a big one.
Yeah, but that's only once a year. I think the people are spread out, so we do have a lot of yale and dale, as the people call it, and then we also have the Spring Street and the lower part here, and they really love to be able to have a procession, like the Niño Dios ones. There was one added in there in December. I don't remember it being too difficult. I don't remember exactly the time, the crossing time. The one that would have a lot of crossing time is El Señor de los Milagros de Cumbe. The Cumbe people come from all over. They're extremely well organized, and I think we could ask them for a lot more help as far as safety, crossing, and things like that. They are extremely well organized group of all the groups that we have, but they do have lots of floats and things like that. That's the one in the end of July. Was that the one that took a long
July 30th, you have it listed here, I believe.
Yeah. See, they have a Friday night mass and gathering just for the organizers. There's 400 organizers. Then Saturday they meet down at the Nelson Park, and then they line themselves up, and it's a tremendous procession. It's really a show. It's a great show. And then crossing Route 9, I guess, is the most difficult procession probably. And after that, they feed everybody. They feed 700 or 800 people up at the school, and they do like a dance contest, a typical dance. Then they go to the community center, Westchester Community Center in White Plains, and they have typical dancing until midnight. Then they go to Graymore, and they have a picnic for 2,000 or 3,000 people. I mean, they were very, but I said they impress me as the best organized group that we have. They're very disciplined, and when their leader speaks, they all do it, whatever it is. So I could see if there's some way to get them to limit the number of floats or things like that they have. I think they're the ones that have the most equipment for crossing 9. I try the best to do what I can to reduce size of some of the participation.
If I may, Father Ed, I'm not sure if I don't think we're talking about a specific procession. I think we're talking about there are 5 of them that I can see, and most of them fall on a Saturday for what I went through, and some of them they don't really have a time frame that they're going to be going by. But I think we're talking about maybe one of the processions, maybe one or 2 the small processions, they could happen just on the small street. For example, let's say La Virgen del Cisne. Maybe instead of starting in Nelson Park, going to the church, it starts somewhere in the upper portion, like Linden Avenue. I'm just saying the streets right now, but maybe starts there instead of going through that, going through Route 9. So maybe I don't think the board. I'm not talking about minimizing.
It happens
Yeah.
twice. It happens. It's the little loop route in May, and then it's
Yeah.
the big loop route in August.
Correct. Because I think we have had, besides Good Friday, we had big processions going through Route 9 a few years back as well, that I can recall. But I
Cumbe
think,
especially.
Yeah, but I think what we're trying to say is like maybe still have the same amount, maybe just in a different route, not crossing Route 9. Maybe that will help our police department to facilitate what is going on there.
Yeah. Well, I think some possibly could be rerouted, but I know the people's desire for procession from that point is important. It's a great place to organize, get together, and then they pass through areas where they really want to have the procession. So the ones that we could encourage, I'd say, to go, maybe the Cisne one as you talk about it. I'm trying to think where they could reroute, possibly up.
I do enjoy when they come by my house, but I think I'm part of one of the little loops. Not quite as high traffic as Route 9.
Yeah. I know some people ask me, are they going to come this way or that, because they enjoy watching the
Well, now I have my list for the year. I'll be able to be
Okay.
ready.
Well, we would try to accommodate anything that we could. I understand the difficulties. I hope you appreciate the people's enthusiasm on the other hand. So we'll try to work to do what we can, okay?
So we can't really approve this until we get,
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be some more back and forth.
Yeah.
And then if this could come, Abe?
But we
Chief
are
Sylvester?
but we are approving Palm Sunday and Good Friday, sure.
Oh, right.
Those
So those are imminent, and then
Plan and get going.
but I thought Good Friday was one of the
And
problems.
the May ones.
No, no. Good Friday's always been.
I know, but I thought
big
the-
one, but
No.
it's-
I wouldn't want to do.
It's an accepted,
Okay.
it's an accepted experience for the
Okay.
community.
So, Father, are you saying that just that one particular one you were describing, or a bunch of them are really Westchester-wide, that they happen at different places, and this is one of the, they're not just in Ossining, it sounds like.
All of them are Nasinik except Cumbe, and the majority of the people from Cumbe are here, which is why they invite their friends, etc., to come. And so we have people, they might be Connecticut, but they relate well to here. Well, they're in the area where they can come easily. Yeah.
One big
The
multi-day
Cumbe
event.
people they just have these very strong ties.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so is the board comfortable with approving for the two March events, Palm Sunday and Good Friday, and then with the expectation that Manager Zambrano and Chief Sylvester and Father Ed will reconnect to explore what sort of
Yeah.
alternate routes we might be
Yeah.
able to,
That Route 9 is
May
the
ones
problem.
as well, because they're simple. None of them are.
oh, and the May ones are,
Well,
well,
the main one is Elizabeth.
yeah, but let's not, I want you to meet soon. I want there to be some impetus for everybody to have a meeting and come to a decision, especially if we have to go back and forth again. But I would anticipate that the May ones, because they're the small loops, so they weren't the ones that were very controversial. But I would say, for now, the board can definitely move forward with the March ones, and then that gives everybody April to, rethink if there might, you could communicate with
Yeah,
some
we
of
do
the
have
people
to
who are
meet with the groups,
managing the
obviously.
route,
Yeah.
who are managing the different, I realize it's different groups that come to you that want to organize the different processions, so you'll want a chance to
Yeah.
talk to everybody if you're going to
Yeah.
change what was originally requested. And then, it can come back to the board, and if there's any other questions or concerns we want considered in the offline conversation with Father Ed and Manager Zambrano and Chief Sylvester, now would be the time.
It sounds like we do that, how many years have we been doing this?
About 30 for some of them. St. Michael and St. Lucie.
They don't come by my house, what can I tell you?
Where do you live? We'll
On a
do
dead end.
That would be a
You
little
can, but I live in a dead end, so pretty much nobody does anything.
Route 133 is a.
Yes, I have a worse route. But I'm on a dead end, nobody comes by where I live.
I just would say I'm amazed that you folks do all this work and so late at night. So I'm going to
No,
bed.
this is a large agenda, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Ed.
Thank you.
Aldo. Thank you, Chief
Thank you, Aldo.
Sylvester.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, I
Yes.
think so. And thank you for the reminder that we are trying to get back on track here. So, we
Oh, my
will
God.
wait.
Back to the,
What time are we supposed to be on?
Well, we moved things around. so.
Okay. Hi, Tom.
I'm sorry, do we want to then bring,
What?
the modification? and-
Well, Tom looks rearing to go. Why don't we?
No,
let
no,
Tom
but they
go?
need,
All right. So
do you need something on the
wearing-
previous thing? What's happening?
No, there's actually.
No, we pushed Paul.
We skipped Paul, yeah, Paul.
So we'll come back to Paul. Because he's stuck here.
Hey, Paul. Look how Tom jumped in front of you.
So Tom is going to talk to you about the budget modifications necessary to be able to wrap up fiscal year 2015, and he has actually some very good news, so.
Oh,
Ooh,
we like good news.
exciting.
From Tom. That's important.
And I'm determined to stay within the footprint that's allocated here, so we're going to move along.
You pass your time, Tom.
Today,
5 minutes.
Good job, Tom.
no, you know, you're going to actually, at the end, you're going to actually invite me to stay and continue to talk. But
We're going to invite you to buy us dinner.
With all the money saved. Okay.
And breakfast.
We
I have
set
the
5
village
minutes
credit
for
card.
budget
Okay,
modifications.
This afternoon, I believe Joe emailed out the budget modifications, which are now on the village's website.
Yep.
There's 7 of them, and I'm going to zip through these real quick. I'm just going to briefly talk about them. But generally, this year was a lot easier to balance the budget than last year. Last year, when I came and talked to you, it was all about window dressing, how to make things look good. This year, I really didn't have to do much in the way of budget modifications.
Thank you for your candor. Continue.
It's all in the presentation of how the financial statements look, and especially on the budget to actual. No appropriation account can be overdrawn, and sometimes you have to use excess revenues to help balance the budget, but that wasn't the case this year. Which was the very good news. So budget modification number 1 was to transfer monies from the contingency accounts. And we've been talking about those during the year. Mostly this was for the unsettled PBA contract, where we have to make an estimate in our accounting records as to what we believe the unsettled union contracts are going to cost for 2015 and record that as an expense. So this would be the corresponding budget modification to take the appropriations from the contingency account and apply them to the police department budget. And then also this year, with the retirement of the village manager, that was not expected. So early in the year, we had earmarked monies out of the contingency account to pay for the retirement payout for that, as well as some other costs with Abe being hired as the village manager. And then also, we had talked about during the year the excess snow removal expenses from the 2014-15 season, which was about $117,000. So we transferred that to the snow budget as well. And then I also listed some corollary items for the water and sewer funds as well. Budget modification number 2 was mostly just to move monies between different accounts that department heads didn't have control over. Specifically, like for instance, we had to move some money to the unallocated insurance accounts, and so I listed where those monies were coming from. But overall, those don't change the size of the budget whatsoever. Number 3 was to appropriate some of the additional monies that we received from Cablevision and Verizon for the PEG access, and also to take some of the monies from our accumulated PEG reserves to pay for the, mostly for the equipment in this building or in this room for the new camera setups and such. That was a total of $36,000 that we had to appropriate from revenues and the accumulated reserve. Budget modification number 4 pertained to the tax surcharge claim. We had estimated in the 2015 budget that we would only need $400,000 for tax surcharge claims, and we actually borrowed $550,000. So I had to increase the estimated revenues for the bond borrowing and the offset appropriation account for the tax surcharge claims. And number 5 was just the balance of Section 8 housing fund. We received a lot of excess monies from HUD for our voucher program for the tenants. So that was about $169,000 of excess revenues that we received from HUD that we're increasing the appropriations by. And also, I did adjust downwards the port-in accounts because we didn't have any port-in revenues. That would be where somebody brings their voucher to the village, and then that home Section 8 housing program would pay the village to monitor that tenant. And we didn't have any such case, so I just wanted to remove that $5,000 offsetting revenue and expenditure account. And item number 6, actually, I want to talk about this a little bit. It has to do with our workers' compensation appropriation accounts. We are very fortunate during 2015 that our workers' compensation expenditures were substantially less than they've been in the prior year. And we also met with our actuary that does the calculations as to how much we should have set aside in our reserve funds. And although the overall liability went up about $1 million, we did have enough monies in the account because we receive insurance reimbursements, and we also had some excess monies from last year. But we had established a policy a couple of years ago with regards to our section, with regards to our workers' compensation program, that if we have any unexpended monies in the general water and sewer funds that were in the budget for that purpose and weren't spent specifically, that money would be set aside to help bump up our reserves for future years. So that's the recommendation. It's about $390,000 in the general fund, and then there's about another $40,000 in the water and sewer funds that weren't expended. So it would be about $430,000. We're still keeping our books open. And we have one more workers' comp run next week. We're going to look at that to see if there's any prior year medical expenses that we might have to accrue. But the goal here is to set aside this unexpended appropriation and put it into our workers' comp benefit fund, which we'll be able to use in future years. And it should also benefit us in 2017 budget if we don't have to put enough or put in quite so much money in the operating funds because we are more than adequately reserved in the workers' compensation benefit fund. Any questions on that one?
No, thank you for that explanation.
And the last item was pertaining to the Kilbrook Sewer Capital Project. We had borrowed $5,008,000, and as Paul had explained several times, over the course of the project, there have been a number of unanticipated expenditures, oftentimes with regards to, I don't want to say it's rock removal, but it's something related to that, where you have to work on the walls of the Kilbrook itself. But during
change orders, right?
Change orders, yes. So as of the end of 2015, we feel that we need about $130,000, and we had talked during the year about utilizing some of the excess fund balance that's in the sewer fund rather than issuing another bond for $130,000. We have more than $1.4 million in the sewer fund, and we had a good year in terms of revenues meeting our goals during the year and appropriations staying within the sewer fund. So that's a recommendation that we transfer the $130,000 from the sewer fund to the capital projects fund for that purpose. And hopefully that'll be enough for that project.
That was a huge project. I actually just
Yeah,
checked out.
and there were a lot of changes that happened along the way, too.
Not least
so-
of which I think is one we're going to be discussing later tonight, which is the Broadway Bridge, which we were not anticipating when that began. Am I correct? Engineer Fraioli?
Did we lose you? It was a dig. Let it go.
All right.
Was the camera on Paul?
So
Next.
All right, so
5 minutes.
so we're fast closing the books,
Great.
And
Great.
the good news is that we knew that we had some excess revenues. I talked about those at the last legislative meeting. That's about $494,000 in the general fund. But the really, really good news is that I've pretty much zeroed out the workers' comp savings because we're transferring those to the workers' comp benefit fund. But all over the budget, all the department heads stayed within their budgets. We also had substantial savings for heat and gasoline and diesel fuel. That was about $121,000 and $154,000 respectively. The police department was, $200,000 under their budget. Fire department $110,000 under their budget. DPW $227,000 after we gave them the money for the snow removal costs. And a lot of this, like in the police department, was because of vacant positions and maybe a little bit pertaining to the manpower for the town sector. But these reductions in expenditures for salaries also translated to savings for retirement and Social Security. That was about $250,000. But the biggest savings was in health insurance. The past couple of years we've had some very, very high health insurance costs, and because we're self-insured. But this year the expenditures are actually about $1.1 million less than what they were a year ago. So we actually have a very substantial savings of about $950,000 in this year's budget. So when you add all these together, and then I'm also subtracting out the $230,000 that was set aside for the Munis project, which we have our kickoff meeting tomorrow. But overall, we have about $1.7 million in unexpended appropriations for the year. So that plus the $494,000 is about $2.2 million that's going back to fund balance.
Well, you must be a very happy treasurer.
And you must be a very happy mayor.
I am.
And very happy trustees. And of course, we have the new manager that cracked the whip. And
How did that happen with the insurance? That's so unusual to have.
because we're self-insured and we had some extraordinary expenditures, extraordinary medical expenditures.
Not in 2015,
Not
but
in 2015.
the years before that.
Years before. And based on the way the expenditures are, our third-party administrator, POMCO, gives us estimates as
Yes,
to
based
what
on
we should put in the budget. They had been trending that health insurance expenditures would increase like maybe 6.5%, which is really kind of low. Generally,
I was going to say, that
10%.
sounds really low.
But, so we put the money in the budget that was recommended, and these expenditures that we had actually for 2014 and 2013, 2 bad years in a row, didn't repeat themselves in 2015.
Okay.
Right.
Which sort of shows, why they trended down on the expenditures in the 2016 budget.
Right, I was going to say, it was during our budget review process that
Yes.
POMCO did another pass and realized that we had the opportunity to actually lower the tax levy as a result of that.
That's right.
It's the pros and cons, right, of self-insurance.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It goes up and down.
Take the pros while they're here. We'll
Yes, no.
celebrate them while they're going.
And that oil is down by about 40%. It must be another,
That's one of the things that certainly helps.
that's a huge savings.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, and I remember
All
in
good.
2014, when we were looking at, I remember we had to make a fairly significant transfer
Yeah.
monies into funds to support the health insurance based on on the projections. I remember like gasping, you know, because it was a large six-figure number that we had to transfer, you know, to make sure we had the money set aside because we are self-insured. So
We'll take it.
All right, Tom, you have more things
Easy
to chat
winter.
with us about?
Credit cards.
Yes, credit cards. Back in 2013, I came to this board, and we talked about contracting with Official Payments Corporation to allow us to, you know, enter the new age of accepting credit card payments. And our idea was we liked Official Payments Corporation because they had like a wall where we would post all of our tax bills and water bills, and the customers would be able to go onto their secure website, find their bill, and pay it with a credit card. And then in 2014, KVS was partnering with Springbrook to bring in a Windows environment software, and we liked the water utility program that they had that also allowed for a customer portal and also a more user-friendly water bill that was key to wanting to go, you know, to change the KVS program to the Springbrook. But we ran into some problems with Springbrook in terms that they would not allow us to use Official Payments Corporation. They wanted us to use their designated credit card provider. And so things just sort of languished with that. And then we heard about Springbrook not actually being implemented in a lot of the other Westchester County communities, and that all led to partly the decision to switch over to our Munis accounting software, which tomorrow is the kickoff.
Thanks for the reminder again, Tom. I've got it on my calendar.
and we're almost at tomorrow. You know, it didn't make sense to us to continue to look at Official Payments Corporation because now with Munis, they're going to have their own customer portal. They partner with about 10 different credit card providers, and we feel that we'll be able to host the payments ourselves on our Munis portal and not need the wall that Official Payments Corporation has. So we interviewed about 5 different credit card providers during the past year in conjunction with a town, hoping that we could, you know, go into this together, and also because a lot of what we do in the finance department is for town purposes anyway. And we decided that we liked Elevon Corporation, which actually partners with one of the local banks in the village as well that we do business with. And we met with them several times more in the past couple of weeks to try to move the process forward and to see what was involved. And they actually need an application to be submitted in order to give us the specific details. So that's what I'm coming back to you for, is for permission to submit the application. But also in the past couple of years, a lot has changed in the credit card industry. And a lot of this has to do with like the hacks at Target and Home Depot and such, and the introduction of the chips in the credit cards to provide more security, and everything now costs more money. Official Payments Corporation was offering us 2.8% blended rate for the 4 major credit cards. It's now about 3% with Elevon, and there's also a monthly fee associated with the chip technology. It's about $15 a month. And also, instead of the $100 credit card swipes, and because, you know, we're a merchant now, if we accept credit card payments, and we want to make sure that we don't help cause problems with people's credit cards, so we would want to use the chip credit card insert device, and that's about $800 per device. So
You'd still have the ability to use the non-chip old-fashioned credit cards, though, right? For anybody who hasn't upgraded.
They're not going to exist in a year.
Yeah, that's the new standard.
Is it that soon?
Oh, no. I mean, Europe's been on it for a long time. When you get your new cards now, they come with a chip. I mean, it's not an option.
But like, with the new Acme stores, they have the devices, and they have the slot to slide in the card, but they're not accepting the chip process. You still need to swipe the card, and they're
But that's 'cause Acme-
and they're taking on the liability by not going that next step and utilizing the chip.
Okay.
Well, what you're saying.
But that's not
you're
what we're
saying-
doing.
What you're saying, Tom, is that we're going to go to the chip scheme because that's the most secure.
Yes, and it's getting to the process or to the point where it's going to be required. Like,
Yeah, it's not a
currently,
choice.
gas stations
it's more
are
secure.
currently exempt. They're on a delay, maybe another year. Gas stations are going to have to switch over.
Yeah, it's not a choice.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many terminals are you getting?
We would need one for the finance department and the clerk's office. But of course, that's where the partnering with a town, because it's a town clerk that actually does a lot of collection of village parking permits and such. But that would be under the control of the town. The building department is very interested in one, possibly DPW, although, we've been also talking internally about, because they don't take in a lot of money in DPW offices, maybe they can be walked upstairs to the building department and utilize that terminal. And then
And
we
what
were
about
also,
the community center?
we've been talking about the community center as well, if they would like to make a payment over the counter using the credit card device instead of having to go to the internet and accessing ActiveNet. So that's, I think that's the departments that we had talked about.
It's 5 times
Great.
800.
So I guess my only question, Tom, is are there other municipalities that are using this particular payment system? Do we have reference?
Elevon?
Yeah. We have other.
They're guarding who their customers are.
But give you references, or I'm just curious.
Well, the town.
Well,
You can ask them.
well,
Why are they not sharing who their clients are? That's not proprietary.
They just, decline to provide that information. If I go on the official payments website, I get to see who their customers are because all their customers are posted on their wall to make payments.
I find that a little odd. They won't tell you the name of other municipalities that they do business with?
I will certainly be glad to take your concern back to them and tell them that it was specifically asked.
Why would they hide if they had a good? They don't have to write it to you in a memo. They could just give you the name of another municipality that uses that. That just seems odd to me.
And perhaps because we've been dealing with a very technical person at Elevon, not with a salesperson.
Oh, so a salesperson might be able to shed some light on it. Maybe it's not as
And Tom, is the
cryptic as it
percentage
seems.
points, the basis points they're charging based on volume, or how's that? I mean, it was 2.8 for
That's
one
part
and
of the
3.
application. They want us to make an estimate of what the average transactions
Right.
are, like what is an average tax bill, what's an average water bill.
Right.
And then we have to try to make an estimate as to what percentage of customers might be paying by credit card. But this would be a system that provides that there's actually 2 credit card transactions. The first for our transaction, and then the second transaction is for the 3% convenience fee that goes to Elevon to pay for what would normally be the merchant's share in a private business, so that we're not incurring any of the costs of the credit card transaction.
The consumer is then.
The
Correct.
consumer is, yes. It's a
It costs
convenience
more
fee.
if you want to pay your water bill or anything else. Like when I register my kids online with ActiveNet for the recreation, there's a fee involved with using the credit card for that. And it's more convenient for me, so I pay it.
I guess my other question would be, Tommy, is there going to be the opportunity for people to pay for things like through an ACH transfer of some kind? Is there going to be another option?
Once we have the Munis customer portal, they'll be able to make ACH payments of their bills there. And we still have CityNet that we'll be using in July for property taxes.
Yeah, well, what you're doing is you're setting up a direct transfer from your checking account directly into
So then we don't
into
have-
into the village.
And then we don't have the credit card fee.
Yeah,
It's kind of like an e-check.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a way. It's just another way of doing it.
The town already has that. 'Cause I've paid my taxes
Yes,
that way.
yes.
No, but that's good, because Chase is the biggest bank in the country for stuff like that, and people will pay through that system too, right? Because that's considered an ACH, that's not a credit card. Not with their credit card, with their online payment.
Right now, it's actually, well, I think that's a system where they actually like mail a check from like Iowa. They log on and they make the payment.
So it's electronic on your side as a consumer, but they're still sending a check. Okay.
Right,
I can't believe
and
they're
Official
still
Payments
doing that.
Corporation,
I do a lot of payments
I believe they actually were set up for those type of payments to actually come to us electronically versus being mailed.
I'm sorry. I gotta make another comment here,
Okay.
just because this whole scenario, this whole application scenario that we're going through, I think it could be kind of revealing. I mean, I don't know if you've done this kind of exercise before to apply to get this kind of service, but it would seem to me that it would set up a metric as to the size of the different payments that we made, that would be made by credit card in different places. And I have to believe that it's competitive out there. In other words, that it's almost like an RFI, RFP kind of scenario. Here are the different types of transactions. Here's your water, here's your sewer, here's your tax, here's any number of different fees that would aggregate into some amount of money that would be transacted over the period of a year. And I mean I have to believe that people are competing to get that business, and 3%, 3%. I don't know. I'm just wondering if we can do better than that. That's all. I know you've done all this work to figure this out, and I appreciate that. But I would want to get. Well, I'm concerned about the fact they won't give you a reference. Now, maybe if you talk to a sales guy, you'll get that. But now I'm wondering if once you put these metrics together in this application, that kind of creates a baseline for the type of business we'd be transacting through a payments processor, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to get a better deal. That's all. That's what I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't know.
I'm just trying to
just throwing
move
a bunch of
forward
words
with something that's been,
I know.
stagnant for
I know. You and I
2.5
talked about that
years.
with the whole thing with KVS and all that, but I don't know if maybe you have.
How long is the contract for? How long is the contract?
This is just an application.
Right.
Contract would
normally-
come as a
Yeah,
result.
Normally
but
would be
what
about
would be the contract?
normally
What are
would
you
be
signing up
2
for?
I think it was 2 years.
2
yes.
years. I can tell you my experience with credit card and whether it's a fee that's being the convenience fee that's being passed to the consumer, or whether the municipality is actually picking up the cost of the credit card expense. The Village of Croton actually, for tax payments and for water payments, actually did work out a deal with a specific bank, Unit Bank out of Massachusetts, and it took months to get it there. And the fees were actually compatible to this particular, to what Tom is saying, about 3%. But it was also more graduating. I think that the larger the tax payment, the larger the percentage was also. The other
Which is like anti-intuitive. It's the same thing for our JCC. We won't take payments over 5,000. And if you try to buy a car, they won't take over a certain amount, because if you want to collect your points and you have a person of money,
Right.
you want to give them your Amex,
Right, sure.
they won't take it, because they're going to be paying actually, it's anti-intuitive and against every economic model that you can imagine.
And with
But this is about right.
when the municipality picks up the expenses,
Right.
I mean, which we're not, I think, it gets a little more complicated, but I think.
I just have a question about this stuff. Are you also accepting Amex? Because Amex
Yes.
is higher than everybody, is that right?
Yes, and that's one of the things that we talked about, back in 2013, and the board at that time felt that we would want to include American Express which did increase the overall percentage a little bit.
Right.
Because it's a very popular card.
But they
No, not because it's a popular car, it's because they can do it.
They're
But-
also on state contract.
Yeah, regardless, but the point is, the consumer's paying the difference, right? So it's being passed to the consumer.
Well, it would be 3% regardless of whether or not it's American Express
Oh,
or
okay.
Visa.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you very much.
That was your 5 minutes.
No, and just, if
not
anybody's
done.
keeping score, we are beyond our total, and we still have some things to go here. So, we were gonna do some EFC, funding opportunity update, because that was, and so Tom, you're sticking with us for that.
Yes, and I'm going to keep this very
Yes, 'cause
brief.
this is something we're not doing.
Dale and I wrote a two-page memo explaining this, and this all is in regards to this Governor Cuomo's announcing $75 million for water infrastructure improvements. The devil's in the details. Water infrastructure improvements is drinking water as well as sewer, clean water. And Dale and I think Joe and Andy watched a webinar that the Environmental Facilities Corporation put on pertaining to this program. And of the $75 million, 75% goes to poor communities, mostly upstate, and we don't qualify in that category. So we would be one of the governments competing for the remaining $18.75 million. And then when you look at the estimated ratio between water and sewer, water was only about 40% of the projects, but of course that 40% isn't specific. So we're talking about competing statewide for $7.5 million, and the maximum amount that was being loaned out under this program was $2 million. So I did the calculations. Utilizing the Environmental Facilities Corporation has some additional costs that we don't incur when we go to the bond market. There's a program administrative fee of 1.1% of the project costs, direct expenses 1% of the project costs, state bond issuance charge of 0.84% of the project costs. And there's also an annual.
On the money, Chief.
Exactly.
That's just like.
That was the point. That was 2.94%, and then we also have to pay 0.11% of the outstanding balance over 20 years.
And that's because the reason why we have the opportunity to borrow it at a better rate is because we have such a good Moody's rating. So we're
that's
able
exactly
to
the
borrow money
point,
at,
right.
at a lower rate. So this exists for municipalities that are not as
Are
fiscally
not,
responsible as
right.
we are. And it's not a grant, it's just a different, they can call it whatever they want, but it's a
Right.
different way to finance something, and it's not one that makes sense for us because we have better options.
No, it makes
So
sense
thank
for
you
others.
looking into it.
And one of the
Yes.
reasons we wanted to bring it to you is because you know what we go through, but I think for the public to understand that we do explore all possible sources
Yep.
of borrowing.
We appreciate that.
And we would have to go to the bond market anyway, because this program is only limited to $2 million, although, the next program could be $15 million. You just never know.
And I know that you'll look at that one when that
Yep.
one comes along and see if there's a better opportunity for us.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom,
Next.
Dale.
That was under 5 minutes.
Thank you,
so-
Dale.
That one was.
Who knew there was so much to talk about when
There
it
you
came
go.
to budget modifications and credit card service?
So do we want to now go back to the program, or do we want?
Yes,
Or do we wanna move it to another day?
Come up and talk to us about the two big projects that we have to review here?
Engineer Fayol, you want to come up?
I think he fell
So
asleep.
this
up
is
there.
an update, I guess, to present to the board proposals. Actually, yeah.
I feel like a meat locker in here.
I'm finally comfortable.
Anybody who has the key? Do
I
you have the key?
have a key upstairs.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, it was.
You're on, Paul.
It was almost 80 degrees when we walked in here.
No, it isn't.
In 3 hours, it's like 50 degrees.
So do you want to start with the Broadway Bridge or the Kilburn?
I'll start with the bridge. Before I start with either project, I just want to remind everybody that in the capital project plan that got incorporated to the budget this year, we had anticipated there's both of those items are on the capital project. The intersection improvements were for this year, and there was an allotment of $450,000, I believe, for that contract, like a placeholder just until we determine the price. But that was the guesstimate at the time of this sheet. And then there was also the Broadway Bridge, which was included in the sheet for public display, but it had a TBD there because we really didn't have our arms around the scope of the project. So since that time, we embarked on the Kilbrook project and found out that the Broadway Bridge, which has a yellow flag from the DOT, excuse me, I want to. Sorry, the Broadway Bridge, which has a yellow flag designation from the annual inspections that the DOT undertakes with the consultant, meaning that there is some compromise to the bridge itself, but it is still structurally sound, so they don't give it a red flag rating, which would mean that they don't want you to use the bridge until it's repaired. So we know there's some work to be done there, and that bridge is our responsibility to maintain. And for those who don't know which bridge we're referring to, it's the lower bridge in the village's double arch, right near the Caputo Center. So the condition of that bridge became very obvious to us when we were working in the Kilbrook underneath. So that said, that project and the intersection improvement project are very close proximity to one another, and as we started to think about how to best approach those because of the delay associated with the intersection project and then the necessity that came a little more urgent for the Broadway Bridge, I wanted to bring them back to you tonight to present two consultant proposals that I would like to recommend doing concurrently for the remainder of this year. So I'm going to briefly describe those. The first is the Broadway Bridge proposal. We used, initially we had thought that we might do this before we really know the true scope as a change order to the Kilbrook sewer job, because it did have some relation to the access, and it was restricting the access if it was going to stay in the condition it was. But after further investigation as to the scope and realizing that it was going to entail a full deck replacement, and after consulting with Corporation Counsel and our village treasurer, it really wasn't relative and appropriate to use out of the sewer fund. It's more of a general fund expenditure. So we didn't execute it as a change order, but we did scope it with the engineer that was doing the Kilbrook project, and he also brought in a transportation structural engineer to propose with him, and I have that proposal, which I think was circulated to you via PDF in your emails.
Keller Sessions.
That's the Keller Sessions proposal, and appended to that is WSP Sells as the structural engineer, and the structural engineer is also the state bridge inspector for the DOT, so they have an intimate knowledge of the bridge and its condition. The construction cost that we would anticipate undertaking in 2017 if we did the consulting work this year is approximately $1.2 million. That includes some contingencies and mobilization costs, and also some escalation, taking it into next year's construction dollars. But just to give the brief overview of the Keller Session proposal, if you go to page, I'm sorry, they're not page 5. You can see it's a design phase of $150,000 and a construction phase of anticipated $59,000. That kind of works within a 4 or 5 month construction window, and it includes a full deck replacement and a rehabilitation of the existing brick arch structure. This is, there's been some talk and some exchanges via email with our engineer and myself, the HPC, and their potential involvement in the project, and just the village's overall interest in maintaining that structure in its present condition. I think we're all on the same page with respect to that, and the scope that is identified in the proposal takes that into account. It includes things in there like rehabilitation of the failing structural arch to its its original condition, including the replacement of the existing bricks that we've actually collected as they've fallen out as much as we can, and the masonry to hold that in place is going to try to match the masonry that's in there now. It's very intricate to the type of mix that they use because it's actually structural arch, so it has to have movement to it. But essentially what's going to end up being replaced is everything to make it look like a structural arch, but they're actually going to put a new concrete deck. So it'll be like a faux arch, but it will be the same brick, the same keystone, and everything else to maintain its historical components. But they're actually going to have a concrete decking that is the actual structural span, which will make it safe for travel. And there's also going to be some drainage improvements, some pedestrian improvements, and then some aesthetic improvements, i.e. like that chain link fence might not be there when we're done. We might do something a little more decorative and make it a little more appropriate for what it really is, which is, you know, a symbol of the downtown, the double arch.
Now, this is the bridge that's Brandreth, right? Is this
No.
underneath the Brandreth Bridge?
No.
Or is this the bridge?
It's just north of the Brandreth. It's the double arches. It's the Broadway Bridge that you would pass over if you drove past the Caputo Center's parking lot.
Right.
You drive over the Broadway Bridge when you drive underneath New York City's Old Croton
I
Aqueduct.
see. Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
And that is when we all walk the Kilbrook Trail in a month or so. That's the view you get. That's what's on the crest. That's what's on the town crest, the village patch. You know, that's where you see that visual is from down in the Kilbrook.
And then, unfortunately, at the moment, the whole underside has black netting.
Yeah,
because-
no, I heard
Because of
that.
the
I mean, I haven't
property
seen
side.
it myself, but I heard that, yeah.
It's not very sightly, but it's necessary. And
Well, it's a safety issue. I mean,
yeah.
if bricks falling from there, you can't. You know.
Yeah. So that said, the total of those two numbers I just read, the 150 something and the 59, come out to about $209,000 for consulting costs, which I'd like to review with Corporation Counsel and the manager, and hopefully have a resolution to proceed with that design work, because we're going to need to do it eventually anyway, because it is yellow flagged and it will eventually become a red flag. It's not there now, so I don't want to put this under any type
What's
of...
the life of this construction work? What's the expected life?
It's a good question. I really don't know. I could tell you that all things being equal, you know, and maintenance and barring any catastrophic event, I can't see it going past 50 years. Or less than 50. I can't see it being less than 50 years.
I understood. I got it.
Yeah. And concurrent with that proposal would be the second proposal, which I believe you also got a PDF from Mazer Consulting. Let me go back to the Keller Sessions one real quick. One of the things that the HPC said was, you know, when you're going to have to run this through SHPO, which is the state's historical preservation office, and they'll most likely get a courtesy review, so we can get their input and get HPC's input. But we're not anticipating any funding from them. We did apply last year, and that's why Deborah and Valerie were having some interaction with regard to some of the components of the bridge reconstruction that we should undertake, so we didn't jeopardize any potential grants. But since we're not anticipating any, because we did get rejected for the one that we made, and we're looking to do this out of a general fund borrow, we really have that flexibility where they're not going to be the approving entity. We're going to do that internal, because it's not a registered historical bridge.
So before we move to the other one, how does everybody feel about spending the money to do the engineering work?
Well, I would ask that, but I want to talk about the second one first, and there's a reason I'm talking about them concurrently tonight.
Okay.
Because of
All
the
right, fair
process.
enough.
No, I will get back to that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I have a method to what I'm doing. Yeah.
Latitude.
Okay. Thank you. So regardless of us not receiving the funding and being under their approvals, we're still going to try to maintain a lot of the historical components. And when we pull that net off of there, you're going to see exactly why. It's really cool. It's and when you see it from down beneath, it's it's kind of neat to see. Mazer's proposal, he's been in front of you before. That's Peter Rosillo. I didn't really feel a necessity to bring it back again to talk about the details of whether we were going to do a conventional or the roundabout design. But what we did take out of the last meeting when Peter and I were in front of you all was a lot of the public questions that came up, and we created a new proposal to accommodate that. Now, if you remember, the conventional intersection went to right about the whatever it was, the 40 or 50% mark of the design when the idea of the roundabout was presented. So it kind of put that on hold, and we started proceeding with the roundabout, which is pretty well documented. And we got to a much lesser phase of design. We got up to about the 10 or 15%. I forget what we said at the last meeting. It was basically just some conceptual stuff and some basic studies based on some existing traffic counts, et cetera, and some general overlay. So at that point, we needed to get a public consensus of what everybody thought before we proceeded. And what came back to us was, why don't we do a little more research so we can refine what we're presenting to the public, and why don't you do it with today's traffic counts with the Spring Street two-way instead of doing it with the old traffic counts that the last comp plan sub-consultant gave us, and why don't you do it with a different eye on some of the parking in the area, and all that input that came in is put into this. So if you look in here, you'll see the Spring Street two-way traffic counts, which if you look through the task, you're going to see all the questions that were asked embedded into this proposal, and this proposal takes you to the 50% design mark of a roundabout, which is going to allow you to have a really good the ability to have a fairly tight estimate on cost of construction, because you could actually take that 50% and go and ask contractors and price things out based on market rates for that. And then we'll have a real apples to apples between conventional and roundabout as far as financials apples to apples, and then an operation apples to apples. And I think at that point, if we work on that this year concurrently, by the end of this year or next year, you're going to be able to say, this is the direction we want you to do with the intersection. So I wanted to get to Trustee Codman's point. That proposal is $33,000. If you see that on page 5, but there's an unexpended amount of $14,000 in his existing PO. So we can either, I'll work it out with Tom. If this gets approved, we could amend his existing PO where there's an unexpended amount of $14,000 and just add $19,000, or we can cancel that PO, send that back to the fund balance, and execute a new contract. Either way, the contract here is for $33,000, and we already have $14,000 to pay for some of it. So it's really an extra $19,000 or $20,000 that we'll be asking for this to take you to that 50% mark. So the reason I asked to present these concurrently, because I do not want to build them concurrently. They're too close to each other. Broadway Bridge, when it's done, we're going to have to basically, for a long period of time, shut down Broadway and put detours up. We'll still maintain access to the Caputo Center and the parking area, but for people to get around to the other side of Aqueduct and Brandreth over there, they're going to have to go around, either from Aqueduct or from Central or any of those arterial roads over there. The same thing with the intersection, particularly if we choose to do the roundabout. There's going to be major detours over there. If you remember, one of the more pricey components of the roundabout was the maintenance and protection of traffic during construction, which is not maybe the case with conventional. Either way, there's going to be tremendous traffic disruption there, which we do not want to do concurrent with a bridge shutdown on Broadway. So if we do both as a consultant efforts this year, by the end of the year, I think we'll be able to really talk turkey, decide what you want to do and what you want to do first, and possibly commence with at least one early in 2017 in the capital plan, and then bid it and go. And then if we finish it early enough, depending on which one you do, because one's going to take longer than the other, the bridge I anticipate is going to take a little longer. If you finish one, then maybe you can even start the second and roll it through.
You think the bridge is going to take longer, not the intersection?
Yeah, I think so, because there's a lot of really delicate components to that.
The intersection, though, we were very seasonally specific on when we wanted
Yeah.
to do the work. We wanted to do it in the summer when there was less traffic disruption of school buses, less people on the road. So
And commuters.
Still the case. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you're asking.
One last thing.
Okay.
I think there is there's the money for the intersection now. I think coming up with an extra $19,000 can be probably done within the operating budget somewhere to make that work and execute that. The $209,000 was always to be determined in the capital budget. It was never really stated as a placeholder, and that's going to have to be a borrow, because I can't imagine where we would pull a general fund money out.
We're all looking at you, Tom.
You're on.
209,000. If the board supports moving forward with the design for the Broadway Bridge, we'll be doing a borrow for that.
Well, it does qualify for a borrow. Being engineering work, it would be limited to 5 years, but if it's rolled over into the actual construction, then it could probably be 10-year borrow. The other alternative is, given the large increase in fund balance, sometimes the smart thing to do is, instead of borrowing, is to utilize fund balance for these one-time
zero interest.
expenditures, not a recurring expenditure like appropriating more in the budget. So it's something to be discussed whether or not it's better to use fund balance one time rather than issuing another bond.
Or we could also, since we have had a mild winter, we can use the money that was budgeted in the snow line.
That money has been distributed about 10 times over. Everybody wants their hand on snow money. Okay.
Still in March. Okay.
Okay. So do we need to make a decision on where the money is coming from, or do we need to just decide that we
Whether we're doing this.
supportive of the engineering or not?
Yeah, I think the, I want to do both of these things. I think how we pay for it is, TBD. I don't necessarily think that we have to, I wouldn't borrow the money.
I think fund balance will definitely be the recommendation from the staff, actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
But as far as wanting to move forward with both of them, I think they're both critical projects that we need to get more information on so we can make decisions.
Trustee Bazemore, you
So,
see?
yeah, I'm definitely in favor of bringing both projects up to speed, definitely for the intersection, so that we can compare the situation with the intersection, and I'm definitely in favor of the bridge, because I think once you're able to see those double arches, that will definitely be an attraction and definitely a view of Austin that we haven't seen before. At least I haven't. So as far as the money is concerned, if we don't make the decision today, when can we have the update to figure out how we actually?
Actually, you'd have to make a decision quickly because with bonding, because we issue tax-exempt debt, the IRS really scrutinizes this, and you have to pass a bond resolution, and then you have to wait for the permissive referendum period if required, and then the estoppel period. With this being just for engineering services of 5 years or less, you only have to worry about the estoppel period, but generally, you can't pass a bond resolution after you've already spent the money, so you'd have to pass a bond resolution now before the work actually gets done.
I mean, if we're in unanimous agreement, what would be the point in waiting is what I would ask. Why would we wait? Are we looking for another answer we don't have? We're not comfortable? I don't know.
I didn't know how, are we all in agreement that we want to move
I don't
forward with
see an
the,
option
with the
here.
Consulting.
to say, because he hasn't said anything yet.
You're very quiet, sir. You have
Yes.
something to add to this or question about?
The Cheshire cat smile, that's given.
Actually, like everybody,
What is that
and I think what we were part of this when they first came out with the bridge. We were told we're just going to do a small repair, and it turned out that it wasn't really a small repair. And I think that's definitely part of the history of Austin. And we definitely need to make the efforts to fix what is going on, the deterioration of the bridge itself. I do want to make just a quick, clear clarification in regards to what it was on our agenda in regards to the roundabout, which is not really a roundabout. It's more like the intersection between Main Street and Spring Street, where I'd had a couple residents either call me or approach me, and even in the social media part where it says that the village board voted no for this particular project. I just want to make it very clear that we did not vote no for any of the intersections. What we stated at that time in the legislative session was we weren't doing anything this year because of what we were doing in regards to parking and what we're doing to all this other stuff, and we wanted to compare apples to apples and what this was really going to be all about. The price difference between a regular traffic light and what it will be putting a roundabout. So I just want to ensure that that is clear with the public. We have to do something for this particular intersection. So going with option B or option A, however you want to call it, I think it's important. So I have no problem doing either way. I think it's the difference is $19,000 for that particular proposal. So, and I'm okay with probably doing with the fund balance portion of that first portion in regards to just borrowing money. So,
Yeah,
so that's
given the
all I have to
financial
say.
situation, it's the logical choice.
Correct.
Okay. So, I think everybody is supportive of, please move forward with, contact the engineers, the consultants, so that we can move forward with getting the documents ready to do these very exciting infrastructure projects. And it sounds like if the staff is, I assume you're going to go back and double check all of the numbers, but if you think that it is wise to borrow from the fund balance rather than to go out to the bond market, then the board is certainly supportive of that. If you discover for some reason that you don't recommend that, then I would say let us know. We want to do what's most fiscally responsible.
So that could be brought up for next week.
Yeah.
On 316, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I will. These did just come to me recently, so Corporation Counsel just, asked me just now, where's my copies to review? She will have them. She'll have them tomorrow, and we'll get them ready. And I'm sure, just like anything else, still there's going to be a caveat in there that executable upon approval.
Right.
Great.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you. All right.
Next.
Two items, and these are also local laws that the board already had held public hearings. Corporation Counsel will take the lead on these.
Sure. We can start with the first one, which was a zoning text amendment. As you know, we held the public hearing at your last legislative session. No members of the public appeared. We've received no written comments, and to my knowledge, the referrals, the necessary referrals, we have received back from the county that they have no problems. This was because it was an amendment to your zoning. You needed to make a referral to the county planning. They have no objections. The other item was that the planning board had some follow-up questions. I did answer the questions in detail in writing, and I received a comment back from the chairman that said, I think this resolves the questions that we had. So they'll finalize, the planning board will finalize their recommendation in their minutes. So there are no impediments as far as your referrals to getting this to move forward. I do have a short form environmental EAF, and before you can take formal action, of course, we'll have to sign the EAF. This was a negative declaration. All of that would be in an approval resolution if you choose to move forward next week. So you'll need to deliberate this evening, find out if you have any objections to moving forward, and if not, you can call for a resolution on next week's agenda.
Great. And just to remind the public and anybody on the board who is not fully cognizant of what we're referring to, the zoning text amendment that you're talking about here is the clubhouse use.
Correct.
Redefining that portion of it where it
Yes.
exists in the zone where this already exists as a conditional use permit that's granted by the planning board, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And it will provide for terrific opportunities for folks to be able to have more events, public events.
Yes, it clarifies the ability of the not-for-profit organizations to include members of the public in their invitations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, and just, I completely forgot that the EAC also acted that it was in conformity with the LWRP.
Perfect.
So those were
Okay.
the three referrals.
Thank you.
So I can
Thank you.
draft a resolution for next week if you'd like to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds good, thank you.
And the last local law, the last item this evening, the local law number 3 was in response to concerns. This is banning smoking and the carrying of lighted tobacco-related products in your parks. And this, again, went to public hearing last week, and no members of the public, and we also did not receive any written objections or even letters in support. So this was not a zoning text amendment, so it did not require the level of referrals that your other local law number 2 did. So you should take up the opportunity at this point to find out if there's any impediments to moving forward. If not, then you can call for a resolution for next week.
Smoke-free parks?
Yes.
Yes, we've discussed it before.
Yeah, we
We're very
have.
supportive of it for the myriad of reasons for health concerns and healthy
Great.
living and.
So I just want to point out to Treasurer Warren that it took me less than 5 minutes to do 2 items.
And that will be 3 laws in less than 3 months, so that's a good start to the year, very good.
Okay.
All good, positive changes.
Just a quick question on that one, and I'm assuming that will be to Paul to make sure to start doing either the ordering designs or the installation of those at some point
For the parks?
for the parks.
Yeah.
That would be Chris Sawyer.
That was Chris?
Yeah, he's in
He still
charge.
has to coordinate that with you, because most of the signs go through you, I believe. Oh,
Yeah,
my-
we both do it. We have signs for the Kilbrook path that say no smoking for that duration. But yeah, we'll have those up.
Do we have those same signs down by the waterfront in that park?
Well, that's Lewis Engle Park is a town park, but we will.
Oh, I
have,
see. I'm sorry.
Signage at
Okay.
the Harry Gordine Park.
They have different rules?
Yes, they do.
Oh. What's their rule? You're allowed to smoke?
They actually
You're allowed to
passed
smoke in the
that.
parking lots.
You're allowed to smoke in the parking lot?
The law
Wow.
has to do
Compromise.
with actually distance from various facilities. Not,
Really?
It's not park-wide, so it's a little bit different.
Wow. That's
Okay.
interesting.
So,
I have
Thank you.
nothing else, Mayor.
okay, then I will just say, the one thing that we missed out on seeing tonight was Dana White's presentation with some of the visuals and information that she had about the historic
Yeah.
markers that she's going to create for those panels on the kiosk. And we'll ask that she is maybe to forward those to you, Joe, and we can get it up on the website. And I'd like to take a look at it, and I'm sure anybody in the public that watched tonight's meeting
Yeah.
has an interest in history or parks might be interested in checking that out. And can we have a motion to go into executive session for purposes of, for advice of counsel and issues of real property, right? Okay.
So move.
On the board? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so with that, I say thank you very much. Please join us for next week's legislative session, where we'll be at the Birdsall-Fagan Police Court facility on Spring Street. The meeting is, as always, at 7:30 in the evening on, this one will be March 16th. Thanks.
16th,
Good night.
yeah.
This meeting is adjourned to executive session.